Okay, so I think we are live. So obviously I'll go through on the mics and just obviously wait for it to kick in once the time has gone off on the old ones. But hello everybody and welcome to our watch along on the Let's Talk Sport YouTube channel of the British Grand Prix. We are live at Silverstone. And being British, it's a fantastic weekend. Who would know? The sun's out. It's a proper British summer weekend. It's absolutely boiling in the room as well. I know Connor's saying the same thing. He's got a south-facing sort of room, so he's boiling. I've got all these machines on. It's absolutely roasting in here. So yeah, it's a proper and lovely British day. But it looks great at Silverstone as well. All the fans are out. It's a full capacity crowd as well. Great weekend for all the fan base at Silverstone as well, because obviously it's the first time they've had the sprint qualifying. People keep saying it's not sprint race, it's sprint qualifying, so I'll try and remember to say that, but it is a sprint qualifying. We obviously had the main qualifying on Friday as well, so the fans have had a lot to watch during this weekend. The W Series as well, Alice Powell taking victory in her home race as well, so it's been great. But obviously we're now watching the main race, the proper British Grand Prix now. And it's great to welcome, obviously, Conor Porter as well. I can see he's wearing a Lewis Hamilton hat as well, so he's representing Lewis, who's starting second on the grid after Max Verstappen beat him in the sprint qualifying yesterday. But welcome, Conor, and obviously, you know, your views on what the what the race could be today.
Yeah, thank you, Jack. Yeah, welcome everyone to the race watch along. And yeah, as you mentioned, the weather looks great, and that could be a huge part into how this race goes down today. If everyone remembers back to last year, we had that huge incident on the final few laps with the tyres degrading for both Verstappen and for Lewis. But then Lewis himself had the blowout and had to go round the final few corners with just three tyres on his car, edging round to get the win, whilst Max was closing in. I'm sure we won't get any of those kind of repeats this year. There'll be very much more tyre management. And we've got examples of that yesterday with them, you know, talking about the blistering in the sprint race. So with that in mind, it'll be interesting to see what tyres they start on as well. Of course, because of the sprint race feature, they've got a free choice of tyres for this start. They don't have to start on the same ones which they qualified in. So that's going to be huge. I don't think we've had any announcements yet as to what tyres each driver is starting on, but I imagine we were discussing off air, Jack. We imagine that it's going to be a lot of mediums out there and maybe a few hards near the back, because the soft tyre is not going to stand at all. But yeah, as you see with my hat with Lewis, I'm hoping for a Lewis win today, and I voted in the poll as well. I said Lewis to win. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see what the results are of that poll in a few moments' time once we get the race underway.
Yeah, I might keep that. Maybe give people 10 laps maybe of the race, just to give obviously their bits in, and obviously let us know there. So yeah, 18 votes so far. Obviously let us know who you think is going to win. It could be somebody completely different as well. They're going to go through the starting grid, so I'll do that as well. Obviously Max Verstappen starting the race it was a pole position actually after the sprint qualifying. Lewis Hamilton in second. We've got Valtteri Bottas starting third alongside Charles Leclerc in fourth. The two McLaren drivers of Lando Norris in fifth and Daniel Ricciardo in sixth. Great position for Daniel Ricciardo after a few struggles this season. Fernando Alonso, great in his sprint qualifying yesterday, made up a few places. Sebastian Vettel alongside in 8th. Esteban Ocon as well in 9th, and Carlos Sainz 10th. Obviously after an issue penalty for George Russell. Pierre Gasly starts ahead of him in 11th, but George Russell with his penalty starts the race in 12th. Kimi Raikkonen, another good qualifying really for Alfa Romeo as well, starts 13th alongside Stroll in 14th. Giovinazzi starts the race, the Italian Jesus in 15th place, with Yuki Tsunoda in 16th. Nicholas Latifi in 17th, with Mick Schumacher 18th. Nikita Mazepin, his teammate, 19th. And Sergio Perez is going to be starting from the pit lane. Obviously had that issue in the sprint qualifying yesterday, and really hampered Conor, not just his own race, but Red Bull in terms of their strategy for this as well, with the two Mercedes alongside Verstappen.
Yeah, over the past couple of races, as we've seen, you know, Perez has been absolutely brilliant teammate for Verstappen. He's been very much into a flow and has been helping Max secure these race wins. You know, being a great back marker between him and then approaching Lewis or Valtteri or whoever's challenging him at the time.
Yeah,
and it's been a great teammate for Max in terms of trying to push on and get these wins. But now starting from the back of the grid because of the spin out yesterday in the sprint race, as you said, or sprint qualifying, I don't know what you want to call it, but
yeah,
it was very much a race yesterday. There was a lot of racing yesterday.
Yeah.
But yeah, it makes the challenge now for Max, who is starting on pole, a little bit harder because he's not going to have that safety net of a Perez keeping either Lewis or Bottas at bay. He's very much going to have to be defensive from the start, and he's going to have a very good start. Just quickly looking, as you mentioned, everyone on the grid is starting on mediums.
Yeah.
And then Perez in the pit lane, he's on the hards. So Perez on a very much different strategy to everyone else. Perez is going to go longer into the race. So
he's going for that one stop, isn't he?
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how attacking he is early on, if he just waits for the opportunities to open up and potentially get the undercut.
Yeah. I think it's very strategic. I think that's very strategic from Red Bull because, like you said, with the hard tyres, even the Hasses and maybe Latifi and the Williams might get a better start of him being on a faster compound with the medium to the hard. But Perez is very much going to be playing the long game, gets the DRS maybe 3 laps onwards, and then makes his way up the order slowly. And obviously, he doesn't want to damage them tyres if he's going to be going a lot longer than maybe the rest of them. But we know how great Sergio Perez is with his tyre management. So I think that's a great call from Red Bull to go on the hard tyre. But I'm a bit surprised maybe some of the others below have also, haven't gone on that hard compound tyre. But yeah, we'll see what it's like when they're all being on the mediums. I'm just seeing the comments from Joel. Obviously, Italian Jesus, as I mentioned, starting in 15th place. Antonio Giovinazzi. No, Jamie. No, he's at the golf. He's at the Open. I have no idea what's going on with the Open. I'm not a huge golf fan. I don't know if Connor knows what is actually going on, but I'm hoping Jamie's having a great time there. George Russell is starting from 12th and not 9th after his sprint race because he had that collision on the first lap with Carlos Sainz. I felt like it was maybe a first lap incident, but maybe from seeing the replay from Vettel, obviously George locks up and takes Carlos out, so I can kind of see where the stewards have come from, but obviously disappointing for George Russell. And it was funny on the radio or after the interviews after that it's the first time he's finished in 9th place this season and he didn't get any points for it, so I felt really obviously disappointed for George Russell, but he's still starting in a great position as well. So Charles Leclerc finished twice on the podium out of 3. I think Charles Leclerc and Ferrari, I mean, obviously they helped with Fernando Alonso yesterday holding up the 2 McLarens in that sprint qualifying from yesterday, but great position really from Ferrari. I don't know if they're going to make any more places. It'll be 4th place, just trying to keep hold of that 4th place for the race, but them McLarens do look pretty fast with Lando and Ricciardo there as well, so it could be difficult for Leclerc in the race.
Yeah, as we've seen from Ferrari throughout the season, they've really struggled when it comes to endurance. The speed over one lap has been brilliant, but endurance has been a problem. And then you might bring up the example, Carlos Sainz managed to finish in the podium places at Monaco. Monaco's a completely different circuit. There's not many opportunities to overtake. So as long as Carlos Sainz is able to defend, then he's not going to really be challenged, and he was able to do that. But throughout the rest of the season, we've not really seen the Ferrari really be that challenging towards the podium places, which is unfortunate because both drivers are very much capable of being up there, but unfortunately the car hasn't been up to that standard so far this season. Maybe hopefully we'll get a few changes over the summer when the summer break comes after the Hungary race next time out in the F1 season. Maybe we'll get some changes during the summer break that will see Ferrari become more competitive. But it might be a case of we might have to wait until next season really to see a Ferrari on the podium. But retirees happen all the time in Formula One, so we'll have to wait and see. Yeah,
and obviously there's a lot of A-lists there as well. I've just seen Tom Cruise, Harrison Ford. They've got Michael Douglas is there as well. We've got all the celebrities at the British Grand Prix with a sort of packed out crowd as well. 356,000 people over the whole weekend have been at the Silverstone track, which is great, obviously, for the British Grand Prix as well. We're getting the green flag at the back, so the 5 lights are almost out. Let's see where this goes for the British Grand Prix. So we are away. Max Verstappen, does he get a good start? Lewis Hamilton looks to have a better one from the second place on the grid. Ooh. That was very close, but Max Verstappen just edging that out as well. Lewis Hamilton trying to go around the outside, which then goes into the inside for turn 3, but Max is defending well. It looks like Charles Leclerc's taken a spot from Valtteri Bottas as well, Connor, which isn't a great start for Bottas's race because he doesn't want to get stuck behind the Ferrari there.
No, there's some great dueling between Max and Lewis, and some great dueling as well between Charles and Bottas. Yeah. Charles is having a great start to race. Already jumped Bottas, but let's wait and see how long he can hold on to her. But yeah, straight away. Oh, Max! Oh,
Uh-oh. Don't say that, Connor. Don't say that. What? What? Oh my God.
oh,
Wow, that is huge. That is
huge.
that's a huge crash.
That is a huge crash. It'd be interesting to see what it looked like on the replay.
Is that a red flag?
Obviously,
or safety car? I mean, that could have been a red flag incident. That was.
this could be one of the pinnacle moments of the championship season.
Wow.
Given the fact that it's a collision between the two championship rivals.
Has Hamilton got damage? Doesn't look like it.
Don't think so.
Wow. That's
if
awkward.
If anything, it would be maybe front wing. But changes happening in the pit lane. Hard tires coming out. New front wing as well.
Is that for Mercedes?
Yeah, Hamilton is not coming in. He's gone past the pit lane.
Oh, is that
Don't know
Bottas?
if the pit lane's closed for the moment, so maybe Bottas is coming in. No, Bottas has gone past as well.
Oh.
So maybe they're waiting to see how long this safety car stays out for, because obviously there's quite a lot of easy ways to remove cars on at Silverstone. But Max is very slow at getting out of his car, so hopefully he's okay. That's quite a hard collision.
Yeah, that car looks a mess. I mean, the one thing I was going to say, and I was going to say it before the stream started, is that when I went in 2013, we were at Copse Corner, so literally where them cameras are is where me and my dad were positioned on the track, and I was going to say that the majority of the time now it's full on flat, isn't it? So there may be not as much action at Copse Corner. Well, I've sort of that's gone out the window now with that huge incident between Hamilton and Verstappen right on the Copse turn there, but battling from the very beginning of that race, and going into each corner from the straight as well, obviously defending well. Max Verstappen there got a great start, but I'll have to see that replay again into whether it was obviously a first lap racing incident or whether it was anything more than that. But yeah, that's a huge impact, and you can see him obviously being looked at by the doctors there. But yeah, that looked huge. He completely spun round and was just going, nothing he could do there. He was just heading it straight into the wall. Huge impact. I'd like to see the G's that the G-force that came out of that collision there. But I mean, look, after that, I mean, we obviously look at it now. Leclerc's in the lead.
Red flag session. So it's been red flagged until they move this car away. But yeah, they're showing a replay now of I don't know if you could blame Lewis. So from what I've seen on the replay there, Lewis is challenging and Verstappen just turns in a little bit on him, and that's the contact on the back left, and then he spins out.
The wheel came off pretty easily though, didn't it?
Back right, sorry. Yeah, came off quite easily. Obviously, it might have just took it off on the... Get a better angle here. Yeah, so it looks as though Lewis has slowed down a little bit to take the corner, but Max has just kept on going at speed. And then just the contact between the two wheels, and the fact that Max is trying to get past him with his back wheel, and it's just bent it backwards.
Is that giving you Rosberg Hamilton vibes from Barcelona 2016? When he sort of went from the left hand side, sort of went behind and went to the right hand side again. Just seeing that replay, I was like, oh, but look at that, the wheel completely off on that replay. That's a great shot. In that slow motion there, nothing Max Verstappen can do. He's just got a one-way ticket into the barrier there. So that's very disappointing, obviously for Max and for Red Bull now, because Sergio Perez is still last on the grid, because obviously they haven't had much. They went straight to a safety car from there. So yeah, not a great day for Red Bull, because they've got one car out and one car at the back of the grid at the minute. Yeah,
I suppose the good thing is it looks as though Max is okay, and he was able to walk out and get out the car, and obviously he'll probably go to the doctor's tent or the doctor's building, I don't know what they call it, to get checked up, because that was a hard collision with the tire walls. Much as the tire wall can absorb some of the impact, the speeds which they're traveling in these Formula One cars, it's going to have a toll on the body itself. But the fact that he was able to walk away, it looks as though promising. But to the race itself, when it restarts now, you got Charles Leclerc in first place, obviously managed to get the jump on Lewis before the safety car was ruled, and then the session was red flagged, as now all the cars come into the pit lane, and they're getting all the coolants and things like that, and keeping the tires warm and things like that. But I suppose the big thing now is how far can Perez move up the field in order to score points for Red Bull, and could could Mercedes get their first 1-2 of the season in order to maximise the gap for not only Lewis on Verstappen at the top of the championship, but also for Mercedes in the constructors as well. Just looking at the constructors championship right now, Red Bull on 289 points, Mercedes on 245 points. So this will be, if they get fastest lap as well, that'll be 25 and 18 plus fastest lap. That's 44 points, which would tie them if they were to do that.
Wow.
So this is a significant race now for Mercedes. 1-2 finish plus fastest lap would be enough to tie him in the constructors.
Yeah. I mean,
unless Perez finds a way to get into the top 10.
This is a huge thing, because I think Toto Wolff said it the other week. I'll end the poll quickly as well, because obviously if Max Verstappen's got quite high up in the poll, that's that gone now. So I'll end that in a minute.
Null and void the poll. It's unfair.
But just quickly, I mean, in terms of what Toto Wolff said the other week, after obviously Max Verstappen and Red Bull have dominated over the last 5 or 6 races, he said Hamilton only needs one DNF from Max Verstappen to be back in this title contention, and this is exactly what's happened here. Obviously, Max Verstappen is not going to get any points, only just made it halfway around the first lap. So, disappointing obviously for Verstappen in terms of his driver championship hopes, as we're watching the replay again, but ultimately as well for Red Bull in the constructors. So I'll just end the poll now and just obviously see what it was highlighting as well once it comes back up on the screen. But yeah, obviously not a great thing for Max Verstappen in terms of what happened in this first lap as well. But like I said, I think once we've seen it, Max Verstappen obviously had 48% of the votes in terms of who's going to win the race. Sadly, that's not going to happen now due to this incident. Lewis Hamilton had 37%, with 14% saying other as well. So I mean, it could be anyone else now as well, because obviously Lewis Hamilton is the main one left in that. But obviously Valtteri Bottas may have another shot. But I'm pretty sure that now with Max Verstappen out of contention, Mercedes are probably going to give Valtteri Bottas the call, surely, aren't they, Connor?
Yeah, it's unfortunate for Bottas because Bottas is in the car and he's got the potential to do it. But with it being in mind that, this is an opportunity here for Lewis to close the gap up to Max Verstappen in the Drivers' Championship, and the possibility as well, maxing out points as much as possible when it comes to in the Constructors as well. Mercedes will do everything that they can to make sure that their cars not only finish 1-2, but finish cleanly 1-2, and there's no issues between the two himself. But yeah, showing a replay, Charles Leclerc started in 4th and now in 1st after a great start. Jumping Bottas in the opening stages from the grid, and then just staying in tow of Max and Lewis when they have their battle, and then got the jump on Lewis before the safety car.
Yeah, because I might have a good view from Leclerc's driver view as well, if of the incident as well, just another different camera angle. But yeah, as you can see from the replay, battling from the very first corner, aren't they, in terms of Verstappen and Hamilton for that first place. Like we said, if Hamilton got the lead, with that obviously having a better power unit overall, I think this weekend in terms of their straight line speed, because Red Bull have gone very much for the corners in terms of their aero, that Verstappen really couldn't afford for Hamilton to get too far ahead. So he did great to defend him for the first 3 to 4 corners, and then obviously going into Copse now, you can see Hamilton does that switch to try and get to the other side, and obviously Max is still trying to make the corner as well. But
yeah,
in doing that, obviously Leclerc just breezes past.
Yeah, like you said, because it's so high speed, the inside line is just so important because it allows you to maximize speed and avoid going off into the runoff area where it's it's a very different surface to what it is on the track itself. So you could see what Lewis was thinking there, just to go onto the inside, and it's showing a great picture there of Max being walked into the ambulance there, and he's waving to the fans. So it's good to see that he's very much aware of what's happened at the very least, hopefully. And
he's still going to be pretty
Lewis looks frustrated as well because of the collision, and it'll be interesting to see what the FIA thinks of this. Obviously, they've got a lot of time now to think about this because of the red flag.
See the damage as well from Lewis Hamilton's
and the car still hasn't been moved. We've got live pictures now. The car's still there. The tyre will obviously need to be repaired to an extent as well to make sure that it's safe for any other collisions that could occur throughout the rest of the race once it restarts. but we've already mentioned about the constructors. Let's look at the drivers at the moment.
Yeah.
Max Verstappen on 185, Lewis on 152. So if a Lewis win today with the fastest lap would give him 26 points, that would move him on to 178. So he'd still be 7 points behind Max in the drivers.
Yeah.
But that's
when you think it was 33, yeah.
When you think it's 33, it's a very significant point differential lost for Verstappen.
That's a great picture as well. Harrison Ford and Tom Cruise having a bit of a chat now, thinking, when are we going to get our helicopter home? This is going to be a delayed session, isn't it? They both actually fly as well, don't they? So that's a pun in itself. Obviously, Harrison Ford obviously flies planes. Tom Cruise flies absolutely everything. So I mean that's certainly an interesting one now going into it, because like you said, obviously Perez went on to the hard compound tyre, and I still think it'll be good for the rest of this session now. As we see, Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton is obviously under investigation. How they go about it, I don't know. I think, it'd be very difficult for to give a penalty maybe to Hamilton, just simply because it's obviously first lap, and obviously we always want to see hard racing, so it should maybe be a first lap incident. But obviously we saw first lap yesterday with George Russell and Sainz, and they gave Russell a penalty on that. So it'll be interesting how they go about this decision. I think the FIA love giving out penalties at the minute. The stewards love throwing a penalty around. So I think it might be that Hamilton gets one coming his way. I'm not sure how significant it would be. It really doesn't matter for Red Bull and Max, because obviously they're not in the session still. So it won't really make a difference what penalty Hamilton gets, really, to be honest, because I think Hamilton will have enough time to claw his way back up anyway if there was any issue. So
just watching the replays, I don't know if Lewis locked up a little bit on the inside there, which would play a huge significance into how the corner was going to go for both drivers. But we've seen it in the past already in the season that drivers that have locked up and then gone on to make contact with another driver and compromise their race, they have been given penalties. So it wouldn't shock me if Lewis is given like a 5-second penalty and he takes it in the pit lane and just drives through. Because I think as well, if he was to do that, then the only real challenger to the race win potentially, depending on how the Ferrari performs, which we've seen, as we already mentioned, it's not a good, it's not been great in terms of endurance over the long course of a race. It wouldn't have too much of a big of impact on Lewis when it comes to finishing on the podium, but obviously he would love to get the race win. But yeah, I guess we'll just have to wait and see really as to what the FIA decides to do in terms of penalties, if they are to hand out any.
Well, I have to say, like, it always seems to be the way every time I try and host a race that we always seem to have a red flag going on. At Imola, we had one as well when we did it, myself and Jamie did it, and that was an interesting race as well, because obviously we had some weather conditions as well that played a factor. But another, obviously, red flag, so the session has stopped altogether, so obviously all the drivers are out, and I can see Esteban Ocon there chatting with Toto Wolff, obviously giving their opinions on everything that's happened. But I mean, if we go on to maybe while this is a perfect time, I thought we might have some time when maybe if the race got a bit dull halfway through, because sometimes that's always a possibility. But your thoughts, and if anybody wants to put any in the chat as well, I'll have a look through the chat in a minute. But in terms of the sprint qualifying yesterday, I mean, what were your thoughts on that? Was it a good thing? Is it a good thing maybe going forward? Do we need to have it on different tracks before we maybe make a full sort of conclusion and on our findings of how it's gone? I think maybe having a different circuit again. I'm not sure if we've announced the final two. I'm not sure if the other two have been announced when it's going to take place. But just your thoughts on the qualifying we had yesterday for the sprint.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed watching the race itself. I thought it was very competitive. As much as they like to not say it's a race, I thought it was very much a race environment, as we saw with Max straight away off the line, getting the jump on Lewis, Fernando Alonso as well, having his great first lap, moving up a couple of places. It was a great format, I think, and it brought a new competitiveness to the weekend. Usually on a Formula One weekend, you would have the practices on the Friday, the third practice, on the Saturday morning, and then a qualifying on the Saturday afternoon. And one of the reasons why they brought in the sprint racer was to try and make it more competitive over the duration of the weekend.
Yeah.
And I think it achieved that. The only issue I had with the race itself is that I feel as though it needs to be more rewarding outside of the drivers that finished outside the top three.
Yeah.
We've seen, when I was watching the F2 sprint race yesterday, I think they finished the top 8 get points on the season for their contributions to the race. So maybe something similar to that, maybe top 6, top 8, just a bit more rewarding really for the mid-table teams, because otherwise they'll start to think, why are we wasting resources on this race when we're not scoring anything from it.
And of course, obviously, I don't want to butt in on that, but of course it's the reliability as well, because they're not getting any extra power units to do these sprint races. So it's more wear on the power unit, isn't it, for reliability, because they only get 3 for the season.
Yeah. So in terms of the rules, there would have to be something in order to adapt to take that factor in the sprint races if they were to incorporate it more into the future.
Yeah.
But like you said as well, it'd be interesting to see how this plays out at other circuits as well. Mm-hmm. I don't think if it was to be incorporated into the season on a full-time basis, I don't think it would be impactful at places like Monaco where it's difficult to overtake.
Yeah.
It would be I think it would be you would have to pick and choose which races you would do it at in order to make it fair for everyone to be able to compete as much as possible for the points itself. So yeah, I enjoyed the concept, but I think more trials are needed in order to see how it plays out. See how it plays out at a different circuit. I'm not too sure what other circuits they are going to be doing it at. But I'm looking forward to the next one, really, to the next sprint qualifying or race, whatever you want to call it, just to see how it plays out. Yeah. See if it's similar to what we had yesterday, or if it's more of a usual race where you don't really get many changes at all.
Yeah, and I don't know, like I said, I don't know if they've announced it. If somebody knows if they have announced the final 2, because they're doing 3 of these sprint qualifyings throughout the year. I mean, I would say maybe Monza would be another one to maybe look at doing the sprint qualifying at, and then it's sort of up in the air where the next one would be, maybe the Americas, because obviously with it being an American Liberty Media, they might want to put the final sprint race of the year at in Austin, Texas for the Circuit of Americas. But obviously it's not been announced yet, but I think a place maybe going forward would be Azerbaijan, Baku, because that always has a great race for a long haul. Maybe we try that with a sprint qualifying as well and see how that unfolds. But I mean, I want to get your take, because obviously I think the most interesting topic that drivers have been talking about as well is the whole history books of pole position, because obviously Lewis Hamilton technically got pole on Friday for his qualifying session on the Friday, but actually it was Max Verstappen that got the pole position for the records because he won the sprint race or the sprint qualifying yesterday. So how do you work that? Do we have a separate record book for the sprint qualifying, or do we keep it whoever got qualifying on the Friday as the history book for that weekend? I mean, how do you figure that out? Because that's been a big topic for the drivers this weekend as well.
Yeah, well, I imagine then you would say qualifying goes to sprint pole, and then the winner of the sprint race. I want to call it sprint race. I don't like the sprint qualifying.
They have said about changing that already, haven't they?
Yeah, but it was obviously yesterday Max got the tire and the reef and all that sort. I'm not too sure how the reef was gonna. I'm not too sure how long the reef was gonna stay around. You said about the truck
as well.
Yeah, some of the concepts of it is I don't think we'll see beyond the season. I just don't think the drivers were very comfortable with being around each other for a 10-minute period trapped in a box. I think they just wanted to go on, and especially Lewis after losing the pole position, as you said. But yeah, just had a look on the F1 website. They said it's going to happen 2 more times this season, and it says the other 2 races are yet to be announced, but Monza is widely understood to be in the running for one of them. So maybe we'll see it at Monza after the summer break.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're just moving the Red Bull now away. It's completely destroyed.
I was going to say, there's not much left of that. I mean, just go back on in terms of just finish maybe on that sprint qualifying or sprint race thing.
Sorry.
Do you think that less laps would be likely as well? Because did you think 17 laps at Silverstone, maybe it was a bit too much? Because I think maybe after lap 12 or something, it maybe fell away a bit. Do you think shrinking the lap count, or are you still would you be happy with that 100 kilometers that we had yesterday?
Yeah, I was fine with the lap count. I think if you have it too short, then it goes into the territory that we were just mentioning about, components and parts
Yeah.
becoming wearing for no reason whatsoever, because there's simply not enough time to make an impact. But I think if they were to change the regs in that way, change the rules and incorporate that, then it'll be great. So yeah, I'm just more waiting to see how it plays out the rest of these races this season. Where if it's incorporated at Monza, I think it would be another good challenge.
Yeah,
because that's another good race. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. Really, I mean, what are your thoughts on it? What are your thoughts on the sprint race?
Yeah, I think the sprint race is a good idea. I think I obviously am a like Sebastian Vettel has said, he's very much a traditionalist and he like the old format as well, and I agree. But I think when you go to a race weekend, like these fans here this weekend, they've had a lot more action than you would if it was the normal style, because Friday practices are pretty boring. They've upped them a little bit this year because they're only an hour long compared to an hour and a half. And obviously when it was an hour and a half, there would be literally half an hour where the drivers wouldn't be out on track. So they've obviously shrunk it to an hour this year, 60 minutes in terms of the practice sessions, which has seen more drivers out on the track, which is great. But I still think obviously what they got Friday evening, people have come home from work straight away, there's a qualifying session on for Formula One. So I think that's a great idea. They obviously had the W Series as well in terms of being on in the afternoon on Saturday, and then obviously had the sprint qualifying or sprint race for the F1 later than that as well. So I think it's a great concept actually. I think it's a good idea. I think, like you said, it needs tweaking, maybe a few more races, see what happens. Do we maybe change things going forward for a couple of races next year? Do we give it a long-term prospect? And I think it needs maybe a bit more ironing out with it just being the first race that it's happened. Ross Brawn said yesterday again, he said he liked the concept and maybe they just need a few more tweaks if they did it next season, and maybe after the next couple that they have for the rest of this year as well. So I think it's probably something that they want to keep for the long term. So yeah, we'll obviously just see how it goes. But obviously great for Formula One and for the fans at Silverstone this weekend. But again, we've seen some action in the first couple of laps already at this track, and obviously we're still at a red flag phase. Lewis Hamilton has got his headphones on, so he's getting the team radio as he's walking down. Not sure where he's going, just going for maybe for a sort of comfort break or to sort of chill out, because we haven't been given a time as to when the session will be restarted yet, because they're still looking at the barriers at Copse Corner, so we might not get a bit of time there yet. So yeah, I'll just go through some of the comments as well. Ricardo says, I think it was a race incident, but taking in account the last race, his incident sort of deserves a penalty. I think obviously we saw that in maybe the Austria race as well, where maybe Lando Norris had a touch with Perez, and Perez again had a collision with Leclerc, so they obviously had penalties from that. So I get your point, Ricardo. I think possibly a penalty is likely for this Hamilton sort of collision, even though it was a first lap. It's good to put Lewis back to a chasing position after 7 consecutive championships. Great to see that the race is becoming more and more interesting. That's from Wong Hector. So I think that's another thing, is that if we put Hamilton with a penalty, or like you said, he'll take it in the pit lane, I expect, when they change the tyres over, we'll obviously see Lewis Hamilton in a bit more of a fighting position, having to overtake as well. So I think that'll be something to look out for. So I think it's going to be an interesting one. On how maybe this restart goes. I'm guessing it'll be more of a restart of what we saw in Baku. Do you think it'll be a standing start again for what we saw obviously at the Azerbaijan Grand Prix? They won't do it under safety car, will they?
No, I don't think they will, because just simply because of how the track finishes. I think it'll be very, very harsh really on some of the back cars to not get a quick start. Yeah. So I think it will be a standing start. But yeah, talking about the penalties as well, it actually just flashed on the screen as well, saying that the race will restart in about 15 minutes time.
Right. Okay.
So we're going to get under racing very soon. But yeah, talking about the penalties, as you mentioned about Lando and Perez incident in Austria, it does look very similar. Contact, and one driver does go off. Very minimal contact, really. In both cases, but enough to make an impact on the driver and enough to make an impact on their positioning. Perez was able to continue, but unfortunately today Max is out, and I think that will come into play. We talk about how we would love to see the FIA be consistent with their rulings and things like that, because at times they haven't been. And I think today is a point where they can be consistent and follow similar rulings to what they did with, Lando on Perez and Perez on, I think it was, can't remember.
It was Leclerc, but
Charles
I can't remember
Leclerc,
if he did it.
yeah.
I can't remember if he did it twice on Leclerc or whether it was another driver. It could have been both times with Leclerc, I think, wasn't it?
So I'm sure we'll find out in the next 15, 20 minutes what the FIA decides, because I think they've had enough time really to look over the incident.
Yeah. It needs to be in the race, doesn't it? They can't say we'll do it after the session.
I imagine it will be in the race.
That was close between Ocon and Alonso there, fighting for the positions.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big weekend for Ocon. He's got he needs to pull out performance really.
I was gonna say let's talk about Ocon there, because obviously as soon as he signed his new nice bumper contract with Alpine, it sort of fell away from him a bit, hasn't it? And obviously at the time when Ocon's sort of dipping off form, Alonso's gone the opposite way. And he's sort of gone back to his sort of best, because obviously we had to give him a few races to really get used to the Formula 1 car again. Completely sort of different regulations to when he left the sport at McLaren in 2018. So he's obviously had to get a little bit more adapted to that. But yeah, like you said, big sort of race weekend for Ocon as well. But he might be a little bit disappointed but he's still got his teammate in front of him at the moment.
Yeah, he had an unlucky weekend at one of the Austria Grand Prix, because he had contact, didn't he?
Yeah, that was the first one, I think, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, and then I think he had a mechanical failure on one of them. I don't know if it was the French Grand Prix or the Styrian Grand Prix, but yeah, it's not been great for him. But ultimately, I think we've seen enough from him in terms of racecraft, and obviously Alpine's seen enough from him as well, given that they've given him a contract extension. That there's something there that he can, he'll be able to bounce back, I think, and pull out the performances. 12 points on the season already, which is pretty good for him. But I'm sure he'll be able to score more than that. He'll, the Alpine car, I imagine the team will be more focused on trying to catch up with the likes of Aston Martin and AlphaTauri in the constructors. Just having a look at the constructors now. Yeah, Alpine's on 32, Aston Martin's on 44. AlphaTauri's on 48. Very much catchable, I think, for Alpine. With Alonso, two-time world champion, Ocon, a very good driver. There's more than enough for them to close that gap between those two constructors. And Ocon, I think, this is a big weekend for him to try and prove that. After a few disappointing / unfortunate events over the past couple of race weekends. So it'd be interesting to see. Race to resume at 15:42, so in 10 minutes time.
Right. Okay. So at least we know where we're heading at this time. So I mean, look, it's a great thing for obviously the British fans to have. At least it's lovely weather. At least they're not sitting in an absolute downpour waiting for the race to restart. So at least it's obviously nice weather. Great to see so many crowds back at an event. And I think qualifying highlighted that, because the roar George Russell got as he was doing his final lap was huge, wasn't it? You could hear the roar from each time he went round the corners, obviously going through cops as well. There was huge sort of applause, and obviously when he crossed the line, it was a great achievement, obviously, for that Williams car as well. And I have to say, Williams have been looking a lot stronger recently over the last few races, whether they've made some tweaks, and obviously they've got George Russell in fine form as well. I mean, could it be ultimately that Williams might get a point in the next few races or so with the performances they've been putting in with that car?
Yeah, I think so. I think if the point's going to come from anywhere, I think it's probably going to come from George Russell. We've seen his performances in qualifying, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
And it's been absolutely fantastic. If there only was a case that George Russell is trying to find his way into that Mercedes seat next season, I think you could only look at the past couple of weekends and how he's been performing in qualifying and showing, look, I've got the racecraft here. Just put me in a great car and I'll be able to deliver great performances.
Yeah.
We saw glimpses of that at the one of the versions of the Bahrain Grand Prix at the back end of last season, when Lewis was unable to drive due to a positive COVID test.
Yeah.
George Russell's got that racecraft there, and I think you're right. I think he will score a point before the end of the season in that Williams car, and it'll be interesting to see where it goes beyond from that, because I think he's very much capable of driving for Mercedes next season. It's just a case of whether or not, Bottas is able to keep hold of that seat, or if Mercedes decide to go elsewhere. I've seen reports saying that, Mercedes are going to make a decision by the end of the summer break, but I think it could go on really, to just depending on, give Bottas a chance to try and fight for this seat himself, because he's a very capable driver of being in that seat, seeing race wins, and he could end up getting a race win today, depending on what kind of penalty is given out to Lewis. Yeah. But to go back to George, I think he will score a point before the end of the season, that Williams car, because he is a very capable driver, and he's shown the quality in order to do that. And I'm keeping my fingers crossed. I hope he does it as well, because I would love to see another British driver up there with Lewis and with Lando scoring points on the season.
Yeah, and because obviously I've had this point with Jamie over the few race streams that we've done, over the race live streams we've done, and he's obviously asked about my thoughts on terms of what Mercedes would do. But I think it's still a very difficult decision for Mercedes to make, because they've obviously been so strong with the partnership that they've had with Hamilton and Bottas. Obviously George Russell, we know, is a very much up and coming driver. He's got the qualities now. He's highlighting that in arguably the second to last, in terms of the grid for Williams still at the moment. But if you were Toto Wolff, if you were the heads of Mercedes, do you make that call with obviously, losing the great partnership that Hamilton and Bottas have got, to then bring George Russell in, who we know, won't really want to play that second role too much, because he wants to show his qualities in the top car? So if you were them, what decision would you make? Would you maybe give Russell another year with a possible higher up the grid if Williams do a better 2022? Obviously, I mean, what would you do in that situation if you were the top guys?
Yeah, it's a very difficult decision, because once Mercedes decide that that's it for Bottas, he's not going to be in the Mercedes seat, they won't have another opportunity to bring him back, I don't think. I think that'll be it. I think he'll get a contract with another team. Yeah. I'm not too sure who, but it'll be enough to keep him as the number one driver on that team. And that's the role that he's been asking for a long time and trying to fight for. But unfortunately, when you got Lewis Hamilton as your teammate, it's a very difficult role to try and obtain.
Absolutely.
But if he was to go to another team, he would have that role. But if Mercedes decide to keep him, then obviously it's the same format as what we've seen over the past couple of years. It very much for being at the start of the season, it is very much, both drivers can fight for the championship, but as soon as the, one starts to push away, then the favoritism comes in, and it usually falls to Lewis. Does Bottas want another season where team orders come in and he has to, be the wingman to Lewis, which he plays that role brilliantly, but he's got that desire to fight for a championship. He wants a championship, and he's shown time and time again that he's got the racecraft in order to do it. Just needs to essentially be the number one driver on the team. So you got that scenario there. If they keep Bottas in the team, then it is very much he has to fight for it against Lewis. But if he goes to another team, then he's got the whole season to fight for it. But it's just a case of whether or not that car is going to be competitive.
Yeah. And
then you flip it over to Mercedes, and it's like, what do they want to do? Do they want to bring George in, who, might want to learn a little bit from Lewis, but then he's going to want to try and fight for the championship himself, because he's got the proven racecraft. And that relationship, I don't know what that relationship is like, but what we've seen from Lewis and Bottas over the past couple of years, it's very much a very close team relationship. Until they're fighting for the championship, and then it gets very much, I'm in my seat, you're in your seat, we're going to fight, it's going to be fair. And then that'll be it. We've not really had any big major collisions between Lewis and Bottas like we've seen between Rosberg and Lewis in the past. So that's a factor to play in as well. There's so many factors to play in. I think the easier relationship for Lewis would be with Bottas, because he knows what that relationship is like. George could come in and be a great teammate, and it could work out fine. But the unknown of it, I think, plays into a factor. And I think Lewis is much more comfortable having Bottas as his teammate, and I think he would, if he had a say in it. I'm not too sure if he does, but if he had a say in it, I think Lewis would prefer to have Bottas to be a teammate at least for next season, and then go from there, really. So I think realistically, I think it's all down to Mercedes whether or not they decide George goes in that seat or not. But I think if Lewis had a say, he would prefer to have Bottas as his teammate.
Yeah.
I mean, what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I think, I mean, as much as I'd love to see George Russell in that Mercedes car next season, and a part of me, thinks it could happen, but I would still say if I was Toto Wolff, the easiest thing, if you're going into a new regulation change as well next year, and obviously you don't know what the other competitors are going to be like, you may lose your front runnership. I know Red Bull have been, very much arguably the better car this season, but Mercedes are still that team to beat. I think if you're in that position where you don't know maybe what's going to happen to next year, you still want that team partnership going into the new regulation change. So I think it's a very difficult decision if Toto Wolff decides to go with Russell over Bottas, because we know how good Bottas has been for Mercedes as a whole, not just for Hamilton in terms of his championships, really, you could say, but also for Mercedes in terms of their consistent constructors titles as well. So I think it's a big call going into new regulation change if they decide to bring George Russell in, but I think it will come to a point when Russell's like, I know I'm part of the Mercedes program, but until unless you give me a seat, I need to find somewhere else. Unless, of course, Williams, do a lot better next year with this new regulation change. We're hoping it's going to help overtaking. It might help Williams going into the next season. Obviously, we've seen the new designs for the car as well over this weekend and what it looks like. The announcement came earlier in the week, so hopefully that helps in terms of all the cars being a lot harder in fighting for races and points than maybe what we get in some races at the minute. But yeah, I think it's a difficult one for Mercedes to make, but I think if I was Toto Wolff, I'd probably go for the easier option, unfortunately, which is keeping the likes of Hamilton and Bottas in the team. But obviously we'll wait and see what Toto does. I think he is a racer also at heart, so maybe he would like to see Russell and Hamilton fighting it out next season. But yeah, like I said, we'll have to wait and see on that. But I'm having a look at in terms of what the people in the chat have obviously said as well, in terms of it's very much half and half actually, in the sense that some people are blaming Max for it, some people are blaming Hamilton, some feel like Hamilton should be getting a penalty, some feel it's a racing incident as well. So obviously thank you for your comments, keep them coming in, let us know your thoughts on it, and of course who you think's now going to win the race from it. I'm just seeing a cardboard sign with Lando on it. I mean, he's still that possibility in fourth place, him and Daniel Ricciardo now in fourth and fifth, so you never know with what could happen. I think it'll all come down to Charles Leclerc in that Ferrari. Can Hamilton and Bottas get past Ferrari of Leclerc as soon as possible? I think once DRS comes into play, it probably will be an easy one for Mercedes to make, really, but it's whether Leclerc can keep it going before the DRS takes place. But all the covers are going off now, so we're starting to see, hopefully, the cars go back out on track. We've got the safety car out in front of them as well. Have you seen on the notes if it's a standing start, if it's a safety car start? I haven't seen a note on that yet about that.
No, I haven't either.
Hopefully they'll bring it up in a minute.
Yeah, I'm not too sure if it's going to be a standing start or safety or with the safety car, but yeah, as you mentioned, the start's going to be crucial. Can Lewis jump Leclerc and get into first straight away?
Yeah.
Try and open up the gap, and then if any penalty comes to him, try and make it minimum impact as possible, because that's ultimately what you would want. Just looking at some of the tires as well, I don't think anyone's changed their tires. Leclerc hasn't, and neither has either the Mercedes, neither has any of the McLarens. So everyone's still on their medium tires. Formation lap, it's saying, so that could be a signal that it's going to be a standing start.
Yeah.
I think the start is crucial for Lewis. If he can get the jump on Leclerc, get ahead, and then if FIA comes in and says, okay, we're going to hand Lewis a penalty, 5-second penalty, and that'll be it, and that will decide the impact on Lewis on the race itself. If that could be enough really for Lewis to go on, take the 5-second penalty in the pits, and then still go on to win the race itself. I think it might be that kind of penalty would be fine for him, but I don't know if they would force a even harsher penalty than that. I think 5 seconds would be enough of a penalty given what we've seen on the replays. I think it would be fair.
Yeah.
And we've seen similar instances in the past. I don't know. Would you would you want to see more than a 5-second penalty? Do you think?
The thing is that also, I mean, I think 5 seconds, five or 10 seconds is probably fine. I wouldn't have any issues with that. The thing for me also is, I mean, shouldn't you have, as the FIA, before this race starts now, do you think they should have just already made the decision before the race starts on where Hamilton is now when he makes the standing start, what he's got under him, if he's got a 5 second, 10 second, or a penalty altogether? Do you think they should have made that decision already, or?
I think they should have, and maybe Mercedes already know, and it's just not been made known to the broadcasters yet.
Yeah.
I imagine Mercedes would know, and they don't find out through the broadcast, because otherwise that's just bad on FIA's part. So I imagine Mercedes already knows, and they've already prepared for it. But either way, Lewis has got to come into the pits anyway for a tire change.
Yeah.
So he's gonna most likely serve it in the pits. So this is why it's so crucial for Lewis at the start to open up that gap, so that when he comes into the pits and not only serves the penalty in the pits, but also the time of a pit stop, that it's not so impactful that he starts to fall out of the podium positions and he has to claw his way back up.
Yeah.
Because as much as respect as we want to put towards the McLaren and the car this season and how it's performed, we've seen with Lando Norris over the past couple of races that even though it can finish, qualifying in the top three places, it simply can't compete with the Mercedes in terms of race pace, and it will quickly get overtaken. So he's not too worried about that. It's just a case of not staying behind the Ferrari for long enough that Bottas keeps that gap closed to him, so that when he does serve that 5 second penalty, that it gives Bottas the jump on him and he's able to overtake him. That'll be the key thing, really, I think.
I was going to say, this is a great opportunity for your Valtteri Bottas to get that jump. If you, and for the team as well, if you know that Lewis Hamilton may have a penalty incoming, whether it be 5 or 10 seconds, this is a perfect opportunity now for Valtteri Bottas to jump Charles Leclerc and maybe start to win this race, because obviously he hasn't won a race yet for Mercedes this season. So this is a perfect opportunity if you're Valtteri Bottas to make that statement, as we see Sergio Perez coming round as well. The final car obviously still on track, with Max Verstappen having that crash on the first lap. So yeah, we're going back to another standing start. So as the 5 lights go out, we've obviously got Charles Leclerc in first place as the cars get away again. Is Lewis Hamilton going to be in front of Charles Leclerc? It looks like Charles Leclerc's got a better start, so Leclerc is still in the lead at the moment. We've obviously got Lewis Hamilton in second place. It looks like Bottas has been jumped once again by another car. It's not obviously Leclerc this time round, but it looks like, is it both McLarens? Is Daniel Ricciardo going to get past as well? I think Lando Norris is through. Bottas is just keeping ahead of Daniel Ricciardo as well. So I've just said that this is a great opportunity for Valtteri Bottas, but he's already been jumped by the McLaren, I believe, of Lando Norris. I've not got the standings up just yet, because
it is Lando.
Yeah,
it is Lando that's jumped him. Yeah. Oh.
What was he, Colin?
I've had a spin round. Sebastian Vettel spun, unfortunately.
Oh, no, not again.
Yeah.
Oh.
He spun. But just a yellow flag for the moment. He's back onto the track though, so it's okay there. A couple of duels as well between the midfield teams of McLaren and Alpine. Alonso looking as well to try and get
that's very close.
Another fantastic race.
Daniel Ricciardo and Fernando Alonso, they're battling it out. So Ricciardo obviously goes ahead of him now. I think Alonso must have jumped him at some point during them first few laps. But obviously Lance Stroll has gone ahead now with Sebastian Vettel at the back now. So that's disappointing for Sebastian Vettel when he was in the points position at that time. But obviously Lando Norris, the home crowd as well, in third position at the minute, just ahead of Lewis Hamilton. Perfect if you're a McLaren fan as well, because Hamilton may have a penalty coming his way, and Norris could be in second place, really.
Yeah, I mean, Norris is obviously keeping that in mind, and just trying to stay as close as possible towards Lewis, because then if he is able to get a jump on him with the penalty, then time penalty has come in, and it's a 10-second penalty for Lewis Hamilton for the collision on Max Verstappen. Wow.
What's your thoughts on that then? Because you said 5.
Yeah, I think they're keeping in mind really as to how big of an impact this has at the top of the championship. And I think 10 seconds is a bit harsh, because obviously now he's going to have to serve that in the pits. And as you mentioned already, this is a big opportunity for Norris now because he's only a couple of seconds behind Lewis. It's a big opportunity for Bottas to get onto a podium to try and score a win.
Yeah.
And as far as he stays ahead, it's a big opportunity for Leclerc to try and get onto the podium as well.
Yeah.
Because 10 seconds is huge when it comes to the race itself. It's going to be a big drive now, I think, for Lewis to try and get on the podium, because that 10 seconds, in my opinion, that 10 seconds has knocked him off the podium right now, as where he is.
Yeah, unless they stretch that gap out now with the top teams managed to get that time out. But where it stands at the moment, he's just, if he say obviously with that pit stop time of the tyre change, at the same time he will be behind Sergio Perez, who I think's up to around about 16th, 15th place, who's made a few places now, obviously with that hard compound tyre that he still has on as well. So Perez in the first couple of laps here has sort of made his way back up the order almost. So great start technically for Red Bull and Perez, with him being the only Red Bull now still in contention for points for the team. So they'll obviously need Perez to put in an absolute fantastic performance, and we know he can do. Look what he did at Racing Point last year when he won the race. He was at the back of the grid at that point, from the first lap incident he had with Verstappen and Leclerc. So Perez has definitely got it in him to do a great tyre management and to get that. As we saw Fernando Alonso and Daniel Ricciardo having a bit of a coming together on the standing start there. So great battling, but Vettel there just looks like what he did at Ferrari a few years ago. Just put the throttle down and just lost the rear, as it were, on the right hand side. I mean, nobody touched him, nobody around him. Just as soon as he sort of touched the throttle pedal, he went round.
Yeah, shown Kimi Räikkönen just unable to catch the corner as well, and he had to go off into the runoff area. But yeah, this is a big moment really for Leclerc, for Norris, and for Bottas here to try and get themselves onto the podium and keep Lewis out. Because at the moment, as things stands, obviously we've just had the race start, but as things stand with the 10-second penalty, I think Lewis would be all the way down in towards 9th position.
Yeah.
With the penalty enforced. Obviously that will change because of the pace of the Mercedes, and he'll be able to extend that a little bit and move up the positions. But I was thinking this as well, as you were mentioning now. I want to get your thoughts on it. Would you, as Lewis now, would you want to pit early in order to serve the penalty sooner, or would you rather try and extend the gap a little bit and hope that you can make the 10-second gap appear on the track before going into the pits to serve it?
Yeah, I think the issue that Mercedes and Hamilton have got, and obviously they'll be talking about it now in terms of their strategy that's going on with that 10-second. There's obviously team radio, but unfortunately I can't hear what Hamilton and his engineers are saying. But it would be that if you're going to come in for a pit stop, you want to sort of be the only guy in the pits at the time, because when you're serving that 10-second penalty, you then don't want to get caught up with traffic when the other guys behind you are coming in to make their stops, because you'll get stuck behind them if they're all coming through the pit lane at the same time. So I think if you're going to make that call to come in and serve that 10 seconds as well as your pit stop, you really want to be the only person coming into the pit lane at that time. So that would be either you come in and do a sort of early pit stop, or you wait till everybody else has made that. And again, that would depend if you're going to go long on how the tyres are going to fare. So I think they must be maybe going for a long one, just because he's still around 1.62 seconds behind Leclerc, and it's 1.3 now actually, sorry. So but I would have thought maybe he would have made a move on Leclerc now if they were going to maybe pit a little bit earlier and sort of use them tyres up. But it's looking a bit conservative from both Hamilton and Mercedes, because I would have thought, as much as Leclerc is doing an amazing job in that Ferrari, I would have thought Mercedes would have better outright pace compared to that Ferrari in the race. So I think they might be a little bit conservative at the moment in terms of their tyres. But yeah, Sergio Perez again looks to have overtaken George Russell, so he's up into 13th place. So, and again, he's on the harder compound tyre, so he can go longer in this race as well. So it's looking a bit good for Sergio Perez at the minute, considering he was at the back of the grid.
I think that's something that Mercedes might consider as well, is when Lewis comes in and after serving his penalty, where does he come out? Does he come out in front of Perez or behind him? Because that will be the biggest challenge really with Perez being on the hard tyres. He's going to go on for much longer than what Lewis will on the mediums. So where does he reinsert himself back into the pack? If Lewis comes out in front of Perez after serving the penalty, then Mercedes will class that as a win really, because they don't have to stay behind Perez and try and overtake him before his pit. But obviously with the fact that he's going to be pitting before Perez itself, it'll make an easier challenge as well with when Perez's tires start to fall and he starts to lose grip with them. So those factors will come into play really as when Mercedes decide to pit Hamilton. But at the moment, he's got fastest lap on his tires right now, so he is closing the gap a little bit to Charles already. With DRS enabled as well now, he's got to try and get to that 1 second gap, and then obviously that will play a huge part into how quickly he can leapfrog Charles and get into to first place.
Yeah, and I think I'm just looking at the chat now, and Teaser, I want to get your obviously name pronunciation right, but as mentioned in their comment, obviously 10 second stop and go plus the time lost in the pits is around about 35 seconds in total. So it's a huge margin when not only are they making their normal pit stop, which is around about 20 seconds, but adding that 10 seconds onto it as well. If he say pits now and does that, he will be at the back of the grid. He'll be behind the two Haas cars even, because Mick Schumacher and Mazepin are around about 29-30 seconds. So of course, if they pitted now and went early, he would be behind. But both of them cars as well. So it's an interesting one as we see Perez is over to Giovinazzi as well now, so he's up into 12th position. So the hard compound tyres are looking very good. So yeah, sadly, Joel, the Italian Jesus has lost a place to Sergio Perez at the minute, so he is back down to 13th position, but still in a good place. His teammate Raikkonen's also in a good place with the final point score at the moment in 10th place, so looking good. Hamilton looks to be slowly closing the gap to Charles Leclerc, so whether he's been told to push a little bit more now and see if he can overtake Leclerc in the next couple of laps or so, we'll wait and see. But the gap to Hamilton and Norris has sort of extended a little bit now. I think it's around about 3 seconds between Hamilton and Norris, but Bottas isn't really making much gains in terms of wanting to overtake Norris either, is he? So
no, I don't know if you mentioned this, Antiza gave us a super chat as well of 50 Croatian. I think that's Croatian currency, that is, which is very kind of you. So thank you very much for that.
Oh, wow.
And saying basically it's both faults, referring to the Lewis and Max incident. Max shouldn't go so aggressive in the part of the track, and Hamilton shouldn't close the door that much, even if he had enough space for his car. Well, the incident was with Hamilton on the inside, wasn't it? So it's more the flip side, Max closing the door on Lewis there with the contact. But either way, the incident is now in the back end. It's been sorted. Obviously, Max will be frustrated that he's out the race. And now Lewis has got that 10-second penalty that he'll have to serve when he comes into the pits. So I guess we're really waiting for that pit stop really to see at what point does Lewis come in. That's the big next key point in this race. When Lewis comes in, what's the situation? Where does he come out? And how far is he behind, the leaders in this race in order to try and score maximum points and to close the gap on Max Verstappen at the top of the championship? We'll just have to wait and see in that. But yeah, thank you very much for that super chat donation, Antisa. Hopefully we are pronouncing your name correctly. So yeah, thank you very much for that.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting in terms of where obviously Hamilton comes out, but the main thing for Mercedes is obviously that he will be obviously further back than they'd like with that extra 10 seconds in terms of adding it onto his pit stop. Can the Mercedes car, which we know over the last few years has struggled to overtake and have sort of the dirty air of the cars in front, that it likes being out in front, as obviously they've been dominating the sport over the last few years, will Hamilton be able to use the DRS to an effect to overtake the cars? I think that'll be the main concern for the tops heads of Mercedes at the moment, is that obviously he will be behind some of the cars normally Hamilton's getting the blue flags for. So can he obviously overtake them in actual true racing style as well? So I think that'll be the thing obviously Mercedes will be looking at, and I think that more importantly, I'm surprised they haven't give Bottas the hurry up really, unless they're obviously in a tyre management phase as we go into obviously lap 11 of 52. Are they still sort of in a tyre management situation? Haven't seen any cars really on board in terms of looking at if any of them have got any sort of blisters or any issues they're coming on the tyres yet. I haven't managed to see any yet, so that will be interesting to see as well. But Perez is still in 12th position at the minute, has Pierre Gasly, another Red Bull or the sister Red Bull team with that Honda power unit in the back. So can Perez get past Pierre Pierre Gasly and sort of almost get up to Kimi Raikkonen close to the point positions as well.
Yeah, good drive by Carlos Sainz as well so far in this race. He's up into 6th.
Yeah.
So a good performance by him after suffering yesterday with the collision with George Russell. But now he finds himself in 6th, so that's a good performance by both Ferraris so far today.
Yeah, what are we saying about Charles Leclerc then? Is it just Ferrari have suddenly got pace from somewhere, or is it maybe the guys behind her are being a bit more conservative with their tyres and allowing Leclerc to be in that lead? What are we seeing from that? Is that just a great performance from Leclerc so far, or?
I think it's a bit of both. I think we saw yesterday how quickly the tyres can degrade, and obviously they've had a lap under the safety car too. These tyres, so we might not see the degrade on the tyres for just a little bit longer yet. But at the same time, we know Charles Leclerc is a great driver. He's got good racecraft in him. He's able to perform well. We saw it earlier in the season with the pole position at Monaco.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be surprised if this is like a little bit of both. A bit of tyre preserving from the likes of Hamilton and Norris and Bottas not challenging him, but at the same time Charles is probably putting in some good performances on the track, so I wouldn't be surprised if it's a little bit of both from him.
I mean, I just turned my mic off then, simply because I've had a really, really loud ice cream van coming round. So I didn't want that to disturb anyone. But God, that was loud as it came round. Obviously, a beautiful day on a lovely sunny day in the UK at the moment. So obviously we can see that highlighted at Silverstone as well. And obviously people are enjoying the ice cream vans as it goes round as well. So yeah, but that was really loud as it came round the block, as it were. But lap 13 now of obviously 52. We're on board with Pierre Gasly at the moment, who's well. We just mentioned obviously Sergio Perez is just behind Gasly, but Gasly's obviously trying to get that final point place from Kimi Raikkonen as well. So good performance actually so far from Kimi Raikkonen and the Alfa Romeos. And obviously we know from the beginning of this week as well that the Alfa Romeo are staying for another 3 years in the sport, with their name being branded with the Sauber team, as it were. So still good that we've got a brand like Alfa Romeo continuing in the sport for the next 3 years as well. And obviously Kimi Raikkonen, we don't know of Kimi Raikkonen's future, but I think if he's still enjoying his racing and the money's still coming in, he's not going to say no to another seat next year at Alfa Romeo, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's a big race weekend really, or I think it's big next couple of weeks really for both Kimi and Giovinazzi, because they've not really been performing that well overall in the season. Only both of them just got 1 point each. Obviously the factor comes in as to whether or not Kimi's going to continue in the sport. He's got nothing else to prove. It's just a case of enjoyment really. Does he still enjoy driving? Does he still want to do it? That's a factor for him. But Giovinazzi, I think there's a lot of pressure on him. Obviously we've got a couple of fans in our watch along that are big supporters of him, but it's a case of he needs to start picking up points, I think, in order to stay in that Alfa Romeo seat, because there's a lot of talent that are in the Ferrari academy that that would love to be in that seat, and other talents as well across F2 that would love to be in that seat as well. Callum Ilott, we've already seen him take part in a couple of practice sessions here and there, and obviously he took part last season as well.
Is it Robert Schwartzman?
Yeah,
as well?
Robert Schwartzman as well.
Yeah.
There's plenty of talent that are in the wings waiting to be in Formula One.
Yeah.
And Alfa must be thinking, we could take one of these on and they could start performing a little bit better for us. But I think it all comes down to, I think Giovinazzi might be given, another season maybe, but it's starting to come close really as to whether or not they would continue with him in that seat. And then obviously Kimi is Kimi, it comes down to him really, I think, as to whether or not he continues on at Alfa. But what are your thoughts really on those Alfa seats?
Yeah, I think if anything, Giovinazzi's. I mean, obviously I know Raikkonen's ahead of him at the minute in terms of the race we're seeing now, but I think Giovinazzi's actually done a decent season so far in terms of comparing against Raikkonen. I think this is probably the season where he has to shine, like you mentioned. If maybe he doesn't put any solid performances in this season, it might be that they find someone else from the youngsters, like you said, Callum Ilott, who's obviously branded with the Alfa Romeo overalls this season alongside Kubica as well. So it might be that they bring Callum Ilott in instead of Giovinazzi, but I think ultimately, I think it's a possibility where they have Giovinazzi and Ilott in the future if Kimi maybe decides to bow out in the next couple of years. So I think maybe not throw Giovinazzi under the bus just yet and just see what happens over the end of the season. Like I agree, I think he'll still have a next year with the Alpha team alongside Raikkonen, but it's whether maybe Raikkonen decides it's to call it a day maybe after he doesn't like the regulation changes for next season. Who knows? We obviously don't know really what's going to happen going into 2022 as well. So I think that's something to maybe look at as some of the other drivers like Vettel, like Alonso, get a little bit older in the sport. Do they want to continue with this completely new regulation change? But I agree with the point somebody's put in the chat as well. I mean, I would try and pronounce your name, but I'm absolutely shocking with pronunciation, so maybe not. But Charles Leclerc doing a fine job staying out of the DRS reach, and I absolutely agree. He's on the team radio now at the moment, but he's at that 1.2, 1.3 seconds, so he's keeping away from Lewis Hamilton, and he's doing an absolute stellar job with 15 laps gone now. That Hamilton, like I said, we don't know what engine mode he's in. We don't know if he's truly pushing, but Leclerc is doing a fine job. Whether that Ferrari is in full engine mode, I'm not too sure, but he's doing an absolutely cracking job. Obviously, Hamilton at the minute does have the fastest lap as well, so that's that extra point going into the end of the race as well. But I say that Hamilton's improved his fastest lap as well again, but so he's just over a second with Charles Leclerc in the lead at the moment. Obviously, if you're just joining us, obviously welcome. It's great to have so many people on the stream as well. But if you're just tuning in, and you can see a sort of a bottom of the screen, Max Verstappen, a DNF. That's because of a collision with Lewis Hamilton on the first lap of the race. Obviously, a red flag came out because of that incident as well. Hamilton's been given a 10-second penalty because of it. So we'll obviously see him take that in the pit stops as well. So that'll be interesting to see where Hamilton obviously drops further down the grid as well. I'm not sure in terms of the timings now how far, say, the Hasses and Vettel are away. If Hamilton was to take 30 seconds, I'd say it probably still is in and around that section in terms of Hamilton does go for that 30-plus second pit stop. But great job so far from Charles Leclerc. As I see, Bottas has also put in a fastest lap as well. Okay, so the two Hasses are 50 seconds behind now, so they're irrelevant for the rest of the race as usual. So it would be around about Tsunoda, I'd say. Tsunoda and Latifi, about 34, 36 seconds would be possibly where Hamilton would come out again if he was to pit now, say, for example.
Yeah, just looking at his front right tyre on this broadcast here, it has got a little bit of graining on it.
Yeah.
So the time might be approaching for him to come off those mediums and onto those onto the hards. But looking at Charles's tyres, there's hardly any graining on them at all. So he could go for another couple of laps or so. But it'll be interesting to see. He's not really pushing for like quickest lap time or anything like that.
No.
But Lewis is closing their gap a little bit to him now. It was, he's got DRS here on this straight here. Sorry if I'm a bit ahead of your broadcast, but
okay.
he's not really pushing ahead to challenge and overtake him. But the fact that he's got DRS, he's in the DRS zone now. It's next few laps will be crucial as to whether or not he can overtake him. If he can't, then I would say bring him in and just try and push on from there. But it's we're into that challenging zone now for Lewis to try and overtake Charles Leclerc, because the fact that he's in the DRS and closing up the gap 0.6 seconds now. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm seeing from the chat it says possible engine problem from Leclerc as well. So obviously we haven't got I'm seeing a lot of radio from Leclerc on in terms of the broadcasters coming on, but annoyingly we're not able to see it, as I see a black and white flag for Gasly for track limits as well. But it might be that Hamilton's closed the gap because maybe Leclerc has an engine problem issue. That could be the case. Obviously, like Conor said, has got DRS as well again going down the main straight as well. So it is possible maybe that Leclerc now is maybe having issues with the engine. That it could be that Hamilton's closing the gap now.
Yeah, Hamilton's just clocked in the fastest lap of the race as well, and is very much closing it down towards Charles Leclerc. So I don't think Hamilton's gonna give up now until he's overtaken Leclerc. Sorry, not give up, pit until he's overtaken Leclerc here, because he's very much closing the gap, as it shows on the little graphic at the bottom, just a millisecond quicker than Charles Leclerc over the course of a lap. So in the next 2 laps or so, I think Hamilton will have enough in order to overtake Charles here. Lap 21, I think will be it. I'm gonna put a pin prediction there. Lap 21, I think he's going to overtake him.
I think it's a good call that he probably won't pit until he makes this maneuver. The one thing I would say is that he's going to have to sort of make that maneuver, because if Leclerc is having engine problems, obviously you need to sort of pounce on that now to try and maybe edge that, try and get that 10-second gap. Overtake Leclerc now, see if you can eke out maybe that 10-second before you have to go into the pit stops now. But we'll see. Obviously, he's got DRS again. If obviously Hamilton can close on Leclerc, but I think it depends on what engine mode Mercedes are using at the minute. But this could be the issue that Hamilton then has further down the order when he does pit. If he's struggling to overtake Leclerc at this time, is he going to have the same issue when he goes back out and he's in the midfield?
Yeah, and he's pulled back a little bit actually. Leclerc saying again on his radio, not too sure what he's saying to his team, but when it constantly flashes up, of a team radio of a certain driver, you know it's
yeah.
they're not celebrating. There's something wrong there in that car. So something is up with that Ferrari. Showing a graphic of the tires as well, the tire performance, and Leclerc is very much on the orange, whereas Hamilton's on the green. So.
Which is interesting when we see all the blisters on Hamilton's car as well.
Yeah, tires, Red Bull in the pits. It's Perez obviously, and he's onto the medium tires. So pits already for
right. What do you think
George
of that?
Russell
with the hard compound tire Perez had, didn't he?
Yeah, George Russell's in the pit as well. So obviously it looks as though Perez is going to go onto a two-stop tops. If I can get my words out of my mouth, two-stop strategy. George Russell's in the pits as well. Can't quite see what tire he decided to put on because the camera pulled away.
Is it a hard tire? Could be a hard compound tire, I think, for George Russell. We've got
Vettel came into the pits as well.
Yeah.
Vettel came into the pits too, and he's came up just in between the Haas cars.
Right, so pits have been made now. Let's see how that has an impact. I think again that the top teams, like you said, Leclerc and Hamilton, Ferrari and Mercedes will be looking at these new times. Perez with the new tyres now. How faster is Sergio Perez going to be on that new tyre? Does that mean Hamilton and Mercedes maybe have to pit now to stop anything happening to once Sergio Perez gets up to speed with them new medium compound tyres? I can see the team radio for Hamilton as well, so it may be that they're already discussing that Red Bull and Perez have made a stop.
Yeah, Hamilton's starting to fall away a bit, even though his the graphics showed that his tyres were okay. He's starting to fall away a little bit. It's gone from being about 0.8 seconds between the two to 1.4. So it's quite a significant change really over the past couple of laps. I said I thought maybe we'd be able to challenge him at about 21, but it looks as though the tyres have come into play. The tyre conditioners come into play for Hamilton, and he's decided to leave the battle for another point in the race. So maybe we see him coming to the pits as Perez is challenging.
Seeing that. Yeah, I'm seeing that on the bottom screen. That's more interesting than what they're putting up on the big screen against Ricciardo and Sainz. They've now gone to the big screen. Perez on first turn, is that? Kimi Raikkonen, great defending there against Perez. Obviously got the faster tyres as Sergio Perez goes deep. Has he made that stick? I think Raikkonen's got the inside line as well, so it looks like Perez is going to have to try again, maybe with the DRS zone as well. But yeah, great scrap between Raikkonen and Perez there. Yeah,
and Perez just takes him at the end of that straight there. Kimi's job's done. On to the next one. And with Perez being on the quicker tyres now as well, Hamilton, he's got to be thinking, I would say I would pit Hamilton just to be on the safe side, really get this 10-point penalty served, because of the fact that it looks as though Perez is on the two-stop potentially with these mediums. So I don't know if he's going to stretch these out for 30 laps. It just doesn't seem possible for me. I think it's going to be 2 stops for a lot of teams today. With that in mind, you have to think that now's the time just so that he's on the same strategy as Perez. And keep that in mind and get Hamilton in and get the penalty served and then go on fourth with the rest of the race and do as much as possible.
Yeah, it looks like from the chat as well, Ferrari tells Charles that the engine problem is now solved, so that's good news for Charles Leclerc, obviously closing extending the gap to Lewis Hamilton as well. And Tisa comes back on saying if Hamilton continues driving like this, he won't make it to the podium. Reason for that is his speed with the kind of driving in lap and out lap won't be amazing for Hamilton, and it will cost him. I think, Conor said as well, I think it's going to be difficult for him to make the podium if obviously with that 30 seconds he's going to have to serve with the penalty and the normal pit stop. And we're not really seeing him make any progress. Like I said, we don't know, maybe from team radio, if they're being a bit more conservative with their time management, but we aren't seeing Hamilton, making any moves on Leclerc, even with DRS. So it could be that Mercedes and Hamilton struggle when they get into that midfield to try and overtake a few drivers. So it could be that maybe Hamilton doesn't score as many points, which will be great for Max Verstappen, considering he's not going to get any at all.
Yeah, Norris is in the pits now. Bottas has already jumped in before the tyre change. And it's going to be hard tyres. Always a slow pit stop for Norris.
Oh, that's not what we want.
Not what we want. Yeah, so hard tyres for Norris. Out he comes. Very slow pit stop. 6 seconds overall. 31 seconds into the in total in the pits.
Is that a rear right? Like a rear right in terms of slow there. Daniel Ricciardo had a 2.8 second pit stop the lap before as well, so a little bit better for his teammate there, but Lando Norris has obviously got to make up some progress. Luckily for him, he's still in and around 6th position even with that 6 second stop. So
what we can actually do with that data that we just got from Norris there with the pit stop, the 6 seconds added on to the normal pit stop time, it took him 31 seconds to get in and out of the pits. We can incorporate that now with Lewis Hamilton's 10-second penalty plus pit stop time. We're looking at an additional maybe 5 seconds on top of that. So it is about 35 seconds in the pits in total.
Yeah.
It's going to be It's going to be a very difficult race for Hamilton to get back into the podiums, I think.
That looks very much like a Valtteri Bottas Monaco issue, trying to get this time I think he was trying to get the wheel on instead of trying to get the wheel off, but the wheel gun looked like it struggled to put the new tyre, hard compound tyre on, as we see Valtteri Bottas coming in the pit. So Mercedes putting Bottas in first, Conor.
Yeah, obviously must be thinking that someone's got to challenge Leclerc, and at the moment it looks as though Bottas might be the best bet for Mercedes to try and get some points out of this race. It's a good pit stop for Bottas as well, and he comes out just ahead of. Oh no, he falls just behind of Alonso in 5th. So he's actually jumped to Norris. He's jumped to Norris to get back into what would be first position on the track at the moment because of the pits not taken place yet. But I guess we'll have to wait and see.
That 6 seconds has cost Norris, hasn't it? Because he would have been way ahead of Bottas from that.
He would have been way ahead if it wasn't for those additional seconds in the pits.
Yeah.
I would say probably 4 seconds they lost there in the pits, I think, overall, which would put him easily ahead of where Bottas is right now on the track.
Yeah.
So very costly pit stop mistake there for McLaren and Norris.
So lap 23 we're on at the moment. Leclerc's still leading with the fastest lap, about 2 seconds ahead of Lewis Hamilton. Carlos Sainz now, with all the pit stops that have been made, is in 3rd place. So it'd be great for Ferrari if the race stopped as it was right now. They just stopped the race and ended it right here, 1st and 3rd for the two Ferraris. Bottas, like Conor said, obviously...
When was sorry to interrupt your thought there. I just wanted to bring this moment in. When was the last time we had 2 Ferraris on the podium at the same time?
Did Leclerc,
I've broken your flow there. I'm sorry.
Did Leclerc and Vettel have a podium together? Or would it have been Vettel and Raikkonen?
I think it might have been Vettel and Raikkonen. I don't think Vettel and Leclerc ever had a podium together.
That's an interesting one. Anyone in the chat could know when was the last time Ferrari had a
Obviously, it's not going to happen because Sainz still needs to pit, but it's just a nice little bit of trivia.
I've seen some great ice cream stats as well. So if we've got ice cream stats in there, surely we've got a Ferrari one coming. So if anyone can let us know, was it Vettel and Raikkonen that was the last in terms of Ferrari, or was Leclerc and Vettel as well? I don't know if Leclerc and Vettel ever got a podium together. I know obviously Leclerc was on for a podium in Turkey last year, but had that spin which gave Vettel the podium. But I can't remember. It could have been actually Vettel and Leclerc, because did Singapore, because Leclerc was leading. Do you remember Leclerc was leading and then Vettel took him in the pits? Was that a 1-2 for Ferrari for Leclerc and Vettel? Might have been. That might have been. I might have to Google. Somebody might have to Google that for me.
I'll have a look.
Singapore, was it 2019 maybe?
Ferrari podiums. Let's have a look.
And teasers put Vettel Raikkonen 2018 Australian, but it may be someone else. Yeah, so that was definitely, at least we know that was Vettel and Raikkonen in 2018. So thank you for that. I just need to double check that Singapore one. Are you doing the knowledge for me, Connor? I can see.
2019 Singapore, Vettel first and Charles Leclerc second.
Yes, my F1 knowledge.
Yeah. So that's last time Ferrari got 1-2, and last time they got 2 cars on the podium.
Wow.
Yeah.
As we see Fernando Alonso, as we've looking at ex-Ferrari driver here, coming into the pits. 5.4 second stop, Connor. That wasn't great either for Alonso. That was a bit slow, so he might... Oh, is Perez going to beat him here? Alonso's going to come out. Is he just ahead of... Is that Stroll?
Yeah, but you would imagine as well, even if Alonso comes out ahead of Perez here, Perez should be able to jump him and get into the points. It's a case of really what happens with the cars that still need to pit ahead of him.
Yeah. What
happens to those guys? Tsunoda, Gasly, maybe even Daniel Ricciardo, but I think the McLaren will be enough to get ahead there. But yeah, Alonso's already jumped Stroll there, who's still got a pit too. I don't think Stroll's pitted yet.
No.
Although are those the hard tires? Maybe he has pitted.
Oh yeah.
I haven't kept track of Stroll. But yeah, if Alonso's already jumped on Stroll, then that's great for him, because that could be a potential points finish now for Alonso. As Carlos Sainz clocks in the fastest lap of the race, so he's not giving up anytime soon. But then Bottas quickly follows with the fastest lap as well. So yeah, Bottas on the charge here. I think Bottas, as things stand, would be the best chance really for Mercedes to try and win this race.
The thing is for the minute, Connor, I'm just trying to look at the stats. So Sainz is about 18 seconds behind, 17 seconds behind. Bottas is about 7 to 8 seconds behind them. If Leclerc pits, I think Leclerc would still be ahead of Bottas at the moment. So Bottas is going to have to put the hammer down to try and have an effect that when Leclerc comes out on his pits, that Bottas is pretty close to that. Just seeing a replay of Alonso, where was his issue there? Again, is that the rear right was a little bit slow, I think. 5.4 seconds in terms of his pits, and obviously did manage to get past Lance Stroll in the end, which was okay for Alonso in terms of that. But yeah, I think obviously Bottas is going to have to push in these next few laps, because it could be that Leclerc still comes out ahead of him. Hamilton's sort of irrelevant at the minute until we know where he's going to come out in terms of his pit stop, but I think it might be in and around where Alonso, maybe Tsunoda is. When he comes out, so it's whether he can overtake them to get some more points. But at the minute, if you're Max Verstappen and you're still watching this race from, say, the Red Bull garage, you're hoping that Mercedes are going to struggle overtaking some of the cars ahead, because obviously if you're Verstappen, you want Hamilton to get as least amount of points as possible for this race.
Yeah, if I'm Max Verstappen though, I'm not watching this race. Have you gone home
by now?
I'm away. I'm away from the racetrack. I've done my media duties and I've gone. I'm not sticking around to watch if Lewis gets the win. I just wouldn't want to see. I'd just rather have someone tell me later on if this happened or not, and just move on from there. But
I love that sign.
I guess we'll wait and see.
That's a great sign. I've missed my wife's birthday because of the F1. Oh dear.
Oh dear.
But I think, like you said there, Connor, in terms, I think it might have been. I haven't got this. Is like not fully confirmed, but I remember 2018 Mexico, or one of the years Fernando Alonso had issues. It might have been earlier that when McLaren Honda, that Fernando Alonso I think went out maybe in the first 10 laps of the Mexican Grand Prix, and then just decided to go on a helicopter, and he was home was back on a plane home before the race actually finished. So would that be what you were doing right now? You'd be trying to find the earliest flight back to Monaco if you were Verstappen.
Yeah, just wouldn't want to stick around really. After the media duties, I just don't think I'd want to stick around. But here we go. Lewis is coming in to the pits.
Right, now we will see.
Here we go. Big moment in the race here.
I'll let you take the pits because you'll know where he comes out of before me. So
all right, yeah. He's in the pits now, and 12 seconds, 13, 14. Starting to serve the penalty now. The 10 seconds. Hard tires are going to come on here for Lewis once he serves his 10 seconds. As he's still waiting to see when the 10 seconds is up. It's up now. So 26 seconds in the pit so far. Hard tires are on. Good change in there from the pit crew there. 14 seconds overall stop time, so only 4 seconds. And he comes out onto the track here, 5th position behind Lando Norris, ahead of Gasly. Yeah, very clean there, just behind of Lando Norris, about 4 seconds behind Norris there. So still an opportunity. The gap between Leclerc and Sainz is 20 seconds there. Ferrari are not looking like they're going to be taking any changes yet, but we'll wait and see. Gap to Leclerc is 35 seconds, it says, overall. So Leclerc ahead of the race still. 35 seconds between Hamilton and Leclerc. So I think that was the best pit stop that Mercedes could do, given the circumstances, with a 10-second penalty. But yeah, we still got plenty of laps to go in this race for things to change. So yeah, the ball's in Leclerc's court now to see what he can do between his in lap, his out lap, and the pit stop as well.
Yeah, and I would say he's doing a tremendous job on their medium compound tires to continue to eke out consistent track time as well. Obviously he's 20 seconds off his teammate, 26 seconds off of Valtteri Bottas. So if he has a nice, smooth, clean pit stop, which sometimes with Ferrari that doesn't happen, but hopefully this time around they can have a good pit stop, which means he would come out ahead of Bottas, as I see Sainz is coming in for his stop. So Ferrari making a move on Carlos Sainz now. So he's the first out of the two to make his stop as well. So let's see in terms of a clean stop for Ferrari for Sainz.
Oh, I'm not going to say it.
Oh no. I was just blighting Ferrari with their pit stop. Come on. Oh, no. God. Well, at least it happened to Sainz over Leclerc, but...
Yeah.
Is that on?
Awful.
Is that on properly? I don't want the wheel falling off down the end of the pit lane, which we have seen in the past as well. Everything looks okay, I suppose, but 12 seconds in the pits, actually stationary for Carlos Sainz compared to Gasly with 3 seconds. So yeah, really, I was just blighting Ferrari with their pit stops, and that proved correct for there. So I apologise, Mattia Bonosso, if you're listening to the stream. I apologise for that. I've absolutely blighted your pit crew there. So, but hopefully
that was a huge, that was a huge opportunity. That was a huge opportunity for Ferrari to try and get Sainz ahead of Hamilton, but the wheel nut wasn't going on for that hard tire, and then it was a slight delay between the tires on safe and we're good to go.
Yeah.
So yeah, there was a huge opportunity there missed for Ferrari to try and get Sainz ahead of Hamilton, and Leclerc comes in now. Tires are on, and that's a much cleaner pit stop for Ferrari there. 2 second pit stop there for Ferrari for Leclerc. So yeah, he very much comes out ahead of Bottas, and a very good pit stop there for Ferrari for Leclerc. So now we see if Bottas can close that gap between himself and Leclerc. But as far as I can see, it's a great pit stop for Leclerc and a good opportunity for him to go on and get a first win of the season for him.
I know, and like I said, I wouldn't have put that down when I was starting the race today. I wouldn't have seen Charles Leclerc. I know starting from 4th place, I thought maybe he could keep on to 4th, and maybe with not that happening, could drop down the order from there. But to still be comfortably, really, with a 7-second gap to Valtteri Bottas in 1st position at the moment. Great job so far. As I just see Joel. He's 3:27 a.m. In New Zealand, I think, Joel, isn't it? So that might be time for bed now with that red flag. It sort of costs watching the end of the race. So yeah.
Thanks for joining us anyway, Joel.
Yeah, I was going to say, obviously, thanks for joining us from there, but I can see why you got to go from here 3:27 in the morning. Goodness. Yeah,
it's shown as well. Hamilton's closing up the gap to Norris, so that. Norris had a bit of delay in the pits, didn't he? If I remember correctly.
Yeah, I think it was 6 seconds. I think, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was an extra 4 seconds, which that might cost them a podium now, unfortunately, with Hamilton closing up the gap in that Mercedes. But we're anticipating that maybe a couple of cars will do a two-stop, but it just depends on how well can they manage these hard tires. Can they force them till the end of the race, or will they have to come in for another set of mediums? We've not really seen any grading on any of the tires yet. So maybe they can last them until the end of the race. But some of the strategies on the app I was reading, some of the strategies on the app said 2 sets of mediums and a hard tire, or a soft and a hard tire. So the hard tire potentially could last until the end of the race. But, it was only last season that we saw tires blow out. And yesterday we saw the mediums being pushed to the limits and grading. And Lewis is approaching Norris here, and it looks as though he is going to take him. And
same move as earlier, but Norris must have seen the replay from Verstappen. He thought, "Oh no, I want points for McLaren."
Yeah, Lewis easily takes it past Norris there, and now he's on the charge towards his teammate Bottas. But there's 2 Hasses in the way there, and they'll easily get out of the way there for Lewis to charge past and to go on towards Bottas and Leclerc near the top of the race itself.
And this is an interesting question now, Connor. Is it that where we are with the season, is this very much Mercedes going to ask Bottas to let them by, or are we going to see a race between the 2 Mercedes drivers for this second place at the moment?
I don't think it'll be a case of Bottas, Hamilton is behind you, let him past. Hamilton, I think, will have to prove that he's quicker than Bottas, so that he can go on potentially to win this race. Because I think as long as Bottas is keeping Hamilton at bay, and the gap stays as it is, and Bottas can close that gap to Leclerc, then Mercedes will give Bottas every single chance to try and win this race. But it's shown at the bottom, striking distance for Hamilton on Bottas is within 2 laps. And that's with the back markers out the way now, as they keep on pushing and marching on. I guess we'll find out in 2 laps as to what the situation is. If it's an easy pass for Hamilton, or if a challenger racing, we're going racing here between the 2 teams.
Yeah, I would like to think that they would still allow that. Gasly again being told off for track limits, no more allowed as his engineers come on. But I think that they should allow Bottas and Hamilton to have a bit of a scrap. We saw it maybe 2019, I think, when they had the silver livery on, where they had a bit of a scrap going into the first 3 corners, I think, of the race circuit, which looked good racing from the pair of them. Whether they allow that to happen this time round, or whether Mercedes look at it and they think, look, obviously it'll help for the team, doesn't matter which way round for points for the constructors, but obviously Hamilton's fighting Verstappen at the moment for the drivers' championship, and Valtteri is behind Norris, I still think. So I think Valtteri will be on the radio saying, well, hang on a minute, obviously I need the points to jump up and pass Norris in the drivers' standings, but I'd like to think it would be a fair racing between the pair of them. But obviously we've seen stuff in the past, like I think Russia a few years ago was a prime example where Bottas had to really let Hamilton by, and wasn't very happy with that, but because I think that was a race win for Bottas as well that he let go.
Yeah, and I think they had a bit of a collision in Turkey, if I remember correctly, last year in the wet. That resulted in Bottas spinning out.
Well, I think Bottas pirouetted about 4 times in that race, didn't he?
Yeah.
It wasn't a great race for Bottas in that one.
Just looking at the driver's standing, as you mentioned there, Valtteri Bottas in 5th with 93 points, Lando Norris in 4th at the moment. This isn't taken into account. Sorry, this isn't taken into account current racing positions. This is before the race began. So Bottas in 5th with 93, Norris in 4th with 101, and Perez in 3rd with 104. So a race win today would potentially push Bottas into 3rd in the standings again, which is probably the best that he can do in this season. So this is a huge moment really for Mercedes as to what they decide to do between the 2 drivers. But obviously at the moment we have to wait for Hamilton to close the gap between himself and Bottas before we get into any any scenarios of what do Mercedes decide to do between the two drivers. Do they let them race, or do they say let Hamilton pass and go on for the win? Or, do they say, oh, Hamilton's not quick enough, don't let him pass? We'll have to wait and see. But I suppose the bigger thing is Mercedes will want to do everything that they can in order to keep two drivers in the races for as long as possible to get the max amount of points up and to close the gap, as we already mentioned earlier in the watch along in the constructors. As things stand right now, if Hamilton was to finish first, or if Bottas was to finish first and the other driver finished second, one of them does have the fastest lap at the moment in Hamilton. So that would be maximum points in the constructors, and it would close the gap up completely to Red Bull, and there would be no gap whatsoever. So that is something to take into consideration when deciding, do they let them to duel, or do they say let Hamilton pass and push on to try and get finished first and second?
Yeah,
so
it's definitely something. It's definitely something to look out for. Another battle that we're obviously seeing on track as well now, for obviously describing for people as well, is that McLaren and Ferrari battle, which we know is going to continue throughout the season for the fight for third position in the constructors. Obviously it's looking great for Ferrari with Leclerc still in first position and net first as well at the moment. And then of course you've got Carlos Sainz, who's bearing down on Daniel Ricciardo at the moment as well. So for Daniel Ricciardo, obviously had a bit of a difficult start to the season. He needs to keep Carlos Sainz behind him, really, not just for himself in terms of his confidence, but for McLaren in terms of not allowing another Ferrari to go ahead of them.
Yeah, Daniel Ricciardo had as you mentioned, difficult start to the season, but he's really bounced back in the last couple of weeks. I think he finished sixth last time out in Austria, if I remember correctly.
He's had a good couple of races, I think, recently. In one of the Austrian races, if it be the Styrian or the Austrian one, he's had a good few races so far. And,
sometimes it does take a bit of use, a couple of races in order to get used to the car, and you could say that's happened for Daniel Ricciardo. Sixth in France, seventh in Austria, so a good performance by him. And if he's able to finish fifth today, that would be his best performance of the season, tied best performance of the season. No, it would be his best performance of the season. Sorry, so far for McLaren. So yeah, he'll do everything he can to try and keep Carlos Sainz at bay, I think.
Yeah, and I'm getting obviously notes again for the chat. So thank you very much for continuing to put stuff on the chat as well. Obviously subscribe to the Let's Talk Sport YouTube channel as well. Obviously we've got many more watch alongs in terms of the F1 as well for the rest of the season. And of course, obviously I'm going to plug my own channel as well in terms of the Pole Position Podcast YouTube channel as well. Of course, subscribe to that as well with the F1 videos that come out. That'd be much appreciated. But the note I'm going on in terms of the chat as well is I'm getting a note saying Leclerc is pulling away, and like I say, I think Hamilton and Bottas, the striking distance has disappeared as well, Connor. But in terms of Ferrari as well, Bottas is not really making much ground on Leclerc at the minute. 9 seconds still.
No, and then that will come into play if Hamilton does meet up with Bottas, saying, okay, we've had a couple of laps now in this race and you've not really closed the gap to Leclerc.
Yeah.
And Hamilton's right behind you now. That might be it. That might be the decision made already before they've even met. If Hamilton does come up towards Bottas, it might be a case of Hamilton's quicker than you. You need to let him pass Bottas. And Hamilton might be Mercedes' best chance of winning this race now, because of the fact that gap hasn't closed up since Leclerc took his pit stop. It's not really changed that much since then. I don't think it's been less than 9 seconds really since the pit stop. I can't remember if there has been.
Yeah, and I can't remember what race it was when they swapped positions. So obviously, because Hamilton thought he was faster, and they swapped positions over, and then Hamilton said, I'll swap the position back if I don't make any gains on that. And it was at the last couple of corners where he gave the position back to Valtteri to be in second place or third place, depending on where they were. So whether they would do the same thing again this time round, or whether Hamilton would just go past and take the extra points against Verstappen, I'm not too sure. But I can't remember what race that was, when Bottas let him past and then Hamilton let him past again on the final few corners. But I know that happened a few years ago as well. So that could be another thing. Hamilton slightly closed the gap to Bottas now to around 2.8 seconds, but the gap between Leclerc and Bottas still is staying around the 9 second mark. So yeah, not many gains, and Leclerc is looking actually really good with that Ferrari, isn't he? Obviously had issues that were reported with engine problems a little bit earlier, but Ferrari looked to have fixed them issues and is looking quite comfortable really in that first position.
Yeah, he's looking very comfortable. We've not really seen much of him on on the broadcast, unfortunately. No. But we are now getting a bit closer between Bottas and Hamilton as well. Just want to draw back to that.
Yeah.
Because earlier in the season, if you remember, Jack, in Barcelona, we had a situation where Hamilton was coming up to Bottas and he was quicker.
Yeah.
And the team told Bottas to let Hamilton pass, but he didn't make it easy for him, did he? He was very much racy in that battle between the two. He's very much defensive and not letting him pass easily on the straight or anything like that.
I don't know if I would have, though, because it was pretty early. Between the two. Yeah, it was pretty early in the season, wasn't it? So I don't know if I would have done as well. There's just been a team radio, but annoyingly I can't hear it to Bottas. But I think that might have been what you've just described as it may have been maybe a call to Bottas to say, look, you know, we're closing. Hamilton's closing more than obviously you're closing to Leclerc. It could be that we maybe have to make that decision to let Hamilton through. We're just seeing a replay of Bottas's front right tyres as well. They've got a bit of graining going on for them, but a lot of. Are we showing another replay of Sergio Perez, or is this not a replay? I think this is live now, isn't it? Of watching what Perez is.
Yeah, Perez still only ninth. He's really having a hard time trying to get past Stroll here. Stroll's having a decent race.
Yeah, compared to Vettel
so far today, so give credit to him.
Yeah.
Vettel's not really moved away from the bottom since his pit, which is really strange there. Yeah. Wonder what's going on for him there. But yeah, Stroll's having a good race. And Alonso as well, he's having a good race for him too. Two good races by them. Lance, just looking up here, Lance started in 14th and he's up to 8th at the moment. And Alonso is in 7th, but obviously we know about the Alpine car. It's not been consistent throughout the season so far, so it's good to see him in the points and really challenging there. But yeah, Lance Stroll on the hard tyres, he's doing a great job there, keeping Perez at bay on the medium tyre, which is a quicker tyre. But yeah, Lance Stroll doing a good job of keeping the two-time world champion at bay.
Yeah, I'm just what I'm going to do at the same time is I'm just putting out our own driver of the day. So obviously put your votes in, of course, to see who you'd like to be driver of the day. Obviously, I think Charles Leclerc's putting in a great performance for Ferrari. I think Lewis Hamilton's put a good performance in as well. Let me just see any other options. Say who else do I think maybe has had a good performance so far? I think Alonso's another good shout. I might put Fernando Alonso in there as well.
I think it would be difficult to vote against Charles Leclerc, especially if he wins this race. You know, he got the jump on Hamilton before the safety car, and he's been consistent as well since the restart as well. Perez is coming in, so he's on the two stops here. He's probably going to get another set of mediums before the end of the race. But you know, with Perez coming in, it could be an opportunity here for Red Bull to try and steal the quickest time if no one else comes in for a two-stop. But I imagine they will come in for another set of mediums, as Perez does get another set of mediums and a very clean stop by him.
Yeah.
And it looks as though he's going to come out around 15th, 16th maybe.
So the issue is, Connor, 16th, is that with the medium tyres, he's going to go for fastest lap, but it's not going to count if he doesn't get in the top 10.
Yeah, that's right. So it's going to be reliant really on a lot of teams and a lot of drivers ahead of him coming in for a second stop.
Yeah.
So that he doesn't have to do a lot of pushing on these tyres to try and get into the top 10. I imagine, he's already taken on. I think this
Vettel?
is Sebastian Vettel here. Yeah, he's already taken him. So Vettel's having a horrible race. Wonder what's going on there for him in that car.
If he had issues maybe with the spin, but it didn't look like he got any damage from that spin he had earlier. But maybe he got something from that. But
maybe a bit of floor damage or something like that.
Could be, that could be something. But obviously we're on lap 40 now. I'll just go through the actual running order for what's going on. Everyone's sort of net for position now as well. So Charles Leclerc is still in the lead. Valtteri Bottas a little bit in terms of closing the gap between him and Leclerc, 7.7 7.8 seconds now at the minute. Lewis Hamilton still has the fastest lap in third. He may be asking to get the hurry up. I can see Hamilton and Bottas team radio, so that may be the call that's coming. So he's still in third place at the moment. Norris and Ricciardo fourth and fifth. Carlos Sainz in sixth, but close to Daniel Ricciardo. Alonso's in seventh for Alpine. Lance Stroll, good performance from him as well, in eighth position. Gasly ninth for AlphaTauri. Ocon, so two double point scorers for Alpine at the minute, which is great for them. Raikkonen in 11th. Sonoda 12th. Russell only in 13th, which is a bit disappointing for him for the Williams at the moment. Giovinazzi 14th. Latifi 15th. Perez now making that extra stop in 16th. Vettel 17th, Mazepin 18th, 19th for Mick Schumacher, with obviously Verstappen out, and that looks like, Connor, the Bottas has easily let Hamilton through.
Yeah, the move's been made, and it looks as though the order was that Hamilton is quicker than you, please let him pass. And he's drifted past him very easily, and now the march goes on for Hamilton over these next 10 laps to see if he can close that gap up to Charles Leclerc and get some significant points in the Drivers' Championship against Max Verstappen. That will be the challenge for Hamilton over these next 10 laps. The gap between Bottas and Norris looks very comfortable, really. I think Bottas has got a comfortable third here. It's really a case of can Hamilton close that gap up to Charles Leclerc, as a radio comes in on my broadcast for Vettel. Probably an explanation as to why he's so far down, but
might retire the car maybe.
Yeah, just as you mentioned there, with the order, a great finish this would be for both McLarens if they're able to get fourth and fifth. Some huge points against Ferrari. With obviously Charles has got the win, which would be a big swing for them, but the fact that they still managed to finish ahead of Sainz will be a huge one in McLaren's favour. But I'm not too sure if it would be enough. Need to remind myself of the point difference between Ferrari and McLaren.
Yeah, so we've obviously got
McLaren in third, 141, and Ferrari in fourth with 122. So it might be enough for Ferrari to leapfrog McLaren, just depending on the points. And I think McLaren would still be ahead, slightly.
Daniel Ricciardo needs to keep this position, doesn't he, against Carlos Sainz for McLaren? Big time. He needs to hold Carlos Sainz back, and even though Carlos has got DRS at the minute, it looks like Vettel's in the pits, which must mean, I'm guessing, he's going to retire. I can't see him having another pit stop because that would be pretty pointless, to be honest. So it may be that Sebastian Vettel's calling time on his race, 42 laps in, with around 10 laps still to go, and the gap between Leclerc and Hamilton is still 7.2 seconds. So I think for Sergio Perez, the one thing, even if it doesn't count towards him getting the point, it may be the case that he has to get that fastest lap just to stop Hamilton from getting it. Yeah,
that's right. I think that's one of the reasons why they brought Perez in so early, is to try and get those lap times up and see what they've got. But he's having a bit of difficulty trying to move up the field because, Russell's putting a good fight up. Oh, there we go. He's done the move now. But Russell was putting up a good fight against him. He's up into 13th now. But, still some pretty good challenges ahead of him to try and get into the points, to even think about getting fastest lap. Would you even push to try and get fastest lap whilst in this midfield battle? I don't think he would. I think he would just try and get the moves done first and then go for it.
I think he might need some clean air to allow to maybe get the fastest lap. But I think maybe the help with DRS could be effective. But for Sergio Perez, I think the team will just be saying, look, if you can get fastest lap, that's great. We just need to maybe stop Hamilton from getting it, because that's just that extra point towards the constructors, obviously, and as well as the driver standings, as we see Carlos Sainz and Daniel Ricciardo once again having a battle for this fifth position. He's still closing a little bit, Carlos Sainz, but is unable to make that move done even with DRS. Daniel Ricciardo is obviously defending really well. Wants this position to have a fourth and fifth, as you said earlier, for McLaren. But Sainz is obviously giving it everything, and actually a good recovery from Carlos Sainz, considering he had that really poor pit stop as well.
That is true. It's good recovery. If he can finish it off by leapfrogging Daniel Ricciardo into fifth, that'll be even better for him. It'll be a good finish for him after a couple of things that have gone against him this weekend. The pit stop, and of course the incident with George Russell in the sprint race. But But yeah, Lewis is closing up the gap to Leclerc. It's 5 under 6 seconds now. So a huge difference from what we saw earlier with Bottas to just a couple of laps later with Lewis. He's really pushing those tires, pushing those hard tires to try and close the gap up to Charles Leclerc. It's going to be, hopefully it'll be an interesting, final few laps with Leclerc and Hamilton battling. But Leclerc is putting up a fight today, and just so everyone knows, I voted for, even though I'm wearing a Lewis Hamilton hat, I've got this ready to go, just in case. No, I'm not going to switch hats. I'm not going to switch to.
He's going to fan swap.
But yeah, I voted. In the driver of the day poll, I voted for Leclerc just because of a fantastic drive from him today in that Ferrari car. Even if he doesn't win this race, it's just been a testament of such a talented driver of Charles Leclerc. Once he's in a Ferrari car that can push for race wins, he'll be up there challenging for the world title, I believe. And today's an example of exactly what he can do, and we've seen it in the past already. And it'll be interesting to see if this form can continue for the Ferrari. Charles has had a great day. Carlos has had a bit of a difficult day, a few things out of his control. But the car has been challenging. It's been pushing. Hopefully Ferrari comes in with a couple of things after the summer break to improve the car. And, maybe we'll see a couple more podiums from them between now and the end of the season, Ferrari. I think the capability is there. And we've seen it, earlier in the season with Charles getting pole and Carlos Sainz finishing on the podium at Monaco. And now today with Charles pushing for the race win. But as the laps go on, Jack, quicker and quicker laps come from Lewis Hamilton with another fastest lap from him. Yeah,
I think this could be where maybe the final few laps, as we saw at the French Grand Prix as well, where Max Verstappen closed in on Lewis Hamilton. It could be that we see Hamilton close in on Charles Leclerc as the final few laps come in. But I absolutely agree. I think the French Grand Prix for Ferrari was an absolute stinker. They were, Leclerc was really struggling at the back of the grid. So the transformation that they've made from the French Grand Prix, over the 2 Austrian Grand Prix that's happened as well, coming into this British Grand Prix at Silverstone, really have done a great job. And I think Carlos Sainz, like you said, obviously has had a few things out of his control, but has done a great race and still fighting Daniel Ricciardo for that fifth spot. So yeah, Ferrari have done a fantastic job this weekend, and full credit to them to be a competitive car this weekend, as we see Sergio Perez once again battling to try and get into the points. I think he obviously just passed Yuki Tsunoda, and he's after Kimi Räikkönen at the minute for 11th spot. So he should be a little bit quicker than these guys, with him being on the faster tyre out of the lot as well as a fresher set. So it should be that Perez in that Red Bull can get a little bit further up the order, but can he get into the points? And if he does, it's only going to be a small one for Red Bull. So not a great day overall for them today.
Yeah, Hamilton is really pushing those tyres. You'll be able to see as he comes down the main straight. He's got a lot of graining on that front right. It's very visible, but he's pushing it.
He's still
pushing
setting
it.
laps though, isn't he?
Yeah, he's going for it. I was looking as well in the history of Charles Leclerc. When was his last win? Of course, he's only got 2 wins to his name, and the last win being, of course, the Monza win, all the way back in 2019. But yeah, it would be a huge win for Leclerc if he's able to cross the line in first today, and get some really big points for him, for Ferrari as well in the constructors. It'll be a huge win for him, and rightfully he should be awarded driver of the day, in my opinion. I mean, we're getting close now, Jack. I mean, I don't think there'll be anything much significant now between now and the end of the race to really change anyone's mind.
No, I'll have a look at the poll now. Maybe just see what the end result is from that. I think, interestingly, looking at the other the poll that was going on the F1 site, it was Verstappen had the same amount as Lewis Hamilton, which was interesting considering Verstappen only did half a lap. But I'll just end the poll now, so obviously we'll get the results up in a few seconds' time in regards to who people feel like should have driver of the day. But I feel like Connor said, it would be very strange not to give it to Charles Leclerc. It's coming up 33% for the F1, and I can see driver of the day for R1, 72% say Charles Leclerc, 13% say Lewis Hamilton, 0% say Fernando Alonso, although I think he's had a great race, and 13% say somebody different as well. So I think obviously Charles Leclerc 72% is well deserved for him, and yeah, looking good. But Lewis Hamilton, like you said, is still closing him down, lap 47 out of 52. But second quicker in the last lap as well, so he is slowly closing. The only issue maybe Hamilton might have in the back of his mind is obviously he had one of them tyre blowout issues last year, didn't he, at the racetrack? So it could be that that's a factor in the back of their mind at Mercedes, but I suppose for the championship he's got to give it everything.
Yeah, Hamilton's very much in the same shots now as Charles Leclerc, so the striking difference is coming up, and 2.3 seconds here. Is there enough time in the last 5 laps, 4.5 laps? I think there might be. It's going to be a very interesting closing 2 laps between Charles and Hamilton as Gasly comes in for another pit. Yellow flag in sector 2. Gasly's got we've got a spin off here. It's Raikkonen. He's spun off, but he's back onto the track. And he's actually reinserting himself back onto the track in front of none other than Charles Leclerc, coming out in a very dangerous position there in front of the race leader. He's got to let him pass quickly, but this could make it a bit more difficult actually for Hamilton to try and get past the back marker, although he's right there already. But that was a very tricky situation there. But Gasly came in as well for soft tyres, but it might just be a case of
because he was in the points.
It might be a case of his tyres have fallen away a little bit.
He was in P9.
Contact between Perez and Raikkonen caused the spin.
Perez again getting in the wars. Oh.
Yeah. Hamilton's got past Raikkonen now, so on the charge once more. Under 2 seconds between him and Charles Leclerc. Oof.
Oh no.
We're getting into that zone now, Jack.
Oh no, I feel really bad for Charles Leclerc because I think he's done a tremendous race for it to be taken away from him with only a few laps to go. I'd feel really bad. Obviously, like you said earlier, great for Lewis Hamilton in terms of the championship and being so close between the two rivals going into the next round in Budapest in Hungary. But I just feel like Charles Leclerc deserves this win because of how well he's done and how well the Ferrari have done. I just think it would be a bit difficult for him to take, but 1.5 seconds now, it's going to be difficult.
Yeah. Whatever happens, I think he's safe to be on the podium, and that would be his first podium since the last British Grand Prix last year. He finished in 3rd last season in the British Grand Prix. So yeah, not a bad venue, I think, for Charles Leclerc, the Silverstone. He's doing well, and but unfortunately he's got Lewis Hamilton, the 7-time world champion, on his tail right now in the last few laps.
Yeah, I was just trying to see the traffic, and it's actually pretty close in and around there, isn't it? You've got Latifi, then you've got Gasly and Giovinazzi who are pretty close. Russell's only about 2 seconds up the road from them, so this might play a factor in terms of the blue flags because they're battling each other as well in front in terms of Gasly and Giovinazzi. So it's going to be quite difficult, I think, for Leclerc and Hamilton to get past these blue flags while obviously they're fighting for position as well.
Yeah, the stewards are going to be waving those blue flags as much as possible over these next few laps to keep it clean racing as much as possible.
Perez is in P10, actually. Great shout from the chat as well. Thank you very much. Yeah, Perez is now up into the points. Only 1 point, but it still is maybe 1 point that Red Bull will take after this, after a disappointing day for the pair of them. But Latifi lets pass both drivers pretty comfortably there, so that's him out the way. It's just Giovinazzi and Gasly who were pretty wheel to wheel over the last couple of corners, so they might be a bit more difficult to let the two past.
Yeah, Hamilton's very much almost at Charles's gearbox, very much there now. He's going to get it done, I think. I think he's going to get it done, Jack.
Oh, no.
I think he's going to get the overtake done at some point in his next 2 laps.
Oh, no. Not a Hamilton hater. I just want Verstappen maybe to have a little bit more of a gap because we know how good Hamilton can be. So if he could maybe stretch it so he has maybe 2 race wins ahead, but that's definitely not going to happen now with Verstappen having that DNF. But
Perez went into the pits again.
Oh, has he had issue
Um,
with contact with that Raikkonen,
um,
or?
I'm not sure, but he went into the pits again, probably to put on. If he's going into the pits, it will be for softs, just to try and steal the fastest lap away from Hamilton. That would
Wow.
be the tactic, I think, because you can't get any higher than 10th, and there's no point getting that point when Hamilton's still got another point with him. So why not take the fastest lap? Oh,
No, no, Connor.
oh!
No, Connor. No.
I'm not saying anything. I'm not saying
No,
anything.
Connor,
I'm
no.
not saying
See,
anything.
Did Hamilton go out? Oh. Well, that was disappointing.
Yes, for me, Hamilton.
That was
Lewis
disappointing.
Hamilton in the race lead, with Charles Leclerc in second. But as I just mentioned there, Perez came into the pits. It didn't show him in the pits, but we can imagine if he's coming into the pits at this stage of the race, it will be for the soft tires to try and get the fastest lap. So at the moment, Mercedes will still be behind Red Bull in the constructors because of the fact that Bottas hasn't managed to finish in second. But if Perez is able to get the fastest lap time and take that extra point away from Mercedes and give it to Red Bull, well, it wouldn't be given to Red Bull, it will be given to no one because of the fact that Perez is in outside the top 10. But if they can take that point away, it could be crucial at the end of the season in the constructors for Red Bull.
A little bit disappointed in terms of that from Charles Leclerc. I feel like that could have been maybe a little bit better in terms of the defensive maneuver, whether it's the tyres or not, I'm not too sure. But that I just feel like he just went off the track and gifted it a little bit to Hamilton there. So that was a little bit disappointing in terms of that build-up, and then Hamilton just sort of like brushed Charles Leclerc aside. So yeah, a little bit disappointing, but obviously great for Lewis Hamilton now. I think he'll be very much conservative, as long as he keeps that gap between Leclerc now, it should be absolutely fine. Save the tyres. You don't want any issues on the last lap like he did a couple of last year. So yeah, it'd be very much just keeping it going now as he crosses the line with just over a lap to go. But yeah, so not a great day for Max Verstappen. Not only did he crash out with his rival Lewis Hamilton, but Hamilton is now going to, as it stands, take the race win and the fastest lap still, because Perez hasn't I don't think made any gains yet with that. So yeah, not a great day if you're Max Verstappen or any Dutch fans out there at all.
Yeah, I just saw the live Drivers' Championship standings as well. Obviously, Lewis closes up the gap with the race win if he goes on to win to Max Verstappen. He closes up that gap. But because Perez is outside the points and not scoring any points, it actually means Lando Norris will leapfrog him into third in the constructors. And as you'll see in your moment on your screen, Jack, in a moment, there's been a change.
I think Perez has
in the
got
fastest
it.
lap.
I think you might be right. Yeah. So Sergio Perez has. It looks like Hamilton won't go for it again now because he's already started his final lap. So it will be that Sergio Perez takes the fastest lap from Lewis Hamilton. But if you're Hamilton, the fastest lap point was a bonus. But you've already taken an extra 2 from the win yesterday, from the second place yesterday in the sprint. So having the race win as well is probably not an issue that you've lost that 1 point maybe to Verstappen. It would help, but I'm not sure he'd be that too concerned winning his home race in maybe the style that he's done so as well. So obviously the fans are cheering him as he goes round on his sort of final lap before he gets the checkered flag. But obviously I think great race for Lewis Hamilton. Ultimately obviously had that issue which I think people are going to be talking about with Max Verstappen on the first lap, but ultimately stayed on the track and has gone comfortably, won the race now with Charles Leclerc being about 4 seconds behind. But I still think Charles Leclerc was warranted of driver of the day. I think he's been outstanding in that Ferrari car. And Connor, I'm guessing you can go across now as he's about to cross the line.
Yeah, he's crossed the line now and he's gone to a parade in front of the Mercedes crew. So yeah, he's in first. Leclerc crosses the line as well. So Leclerc gets his first podium since the British Grand Prix last season, a well-deserved second place for him. And then Bottas as well crosses the line now in third. So good points for Mercedes on the day. Lewis Hamilton punching his fist into the air. Great win for him at the British Grand Prix after a 10-second penalty in the pit stops. He's managed to overcome that and as well win the British Grand Prix and close the gap to Max Verstappen in the Drivers' Championship to, I think it would now be about 10 or 9 points. So from that massive gap that Max Verstappen had coming into the weekend of 33 points. It's now very close to just single digits. Heartbreaking for Max Verstappen on the weekend, but a huge weekend for Lewis Hamilton, as well as Mercedes in the Constructors' Championships, as the gap has closed there as well. So great win for Lewis Hamilton, and a fantastic drive as well for Charles Leclerc, a very deserving driver of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he's, like you say, he's fully deserved that. Obviously got 72% of our vote. I'm not sure how many he got in terms of the Formula One win, but surely should have warranted that as well. Perez, like you mentioned, got the fastest lap of the race as well. So it doesn't go to anyone. It just sort of disappears. I see Hamilton's got a Union Jack from somewhere. I'm not sure where that's been given, if a steward has passed that to him.
Yeah, one of the stewards gave it to him, yeah.
Yeah, but obviously some people in the chat here saying that wasn't a deserved win. Obviously he's only led 3 laps of the race out of 52, but you've got to be there when it counts. And I think Hamilton is definitely one of them drivers that is always in the right place at the right time to pounce on an opportunity, and he's done exactly the same thing in this race as well. I'd be disappointed if I was Charles Leclerc, even though I didn't think that we would be that they would be in the position that they are anyway, but obviously a little bit disappointed maybe that they didn't win the race in the end. But for Lewis Hamilton, a perfect weekend really in getting that race win and them extra points, and like you said, not what Max Verstappen needs. Gone from around 33 to single digits now, so very disappointed if you're a Dutch fan, or obviously Max Verstappen fan as well. So yeah, a little bit disappointed for him. If he was Conor, he'd be in Monaco at home by now, and not knowing the race result, that's for sure. But obviously great result for Lewis Hamilton, and Mercedes as well. Obviously Bottas didn't really make any ground to make the race win, which is obviously disappointing for him, but ultimately for Mercedes have closed the gap, like you said, to Red Bull. So great thing for both Mercedes drivers really.
Yeah, Red Bull will be very frustrated after seeing Perez spin out in the sprint, and then obviously the crash for Verstappen is a very, very disappointing weekend for Red Bull overall. But I think they can come out of this race still knowing that they're competitive, and they'll try and challenge when the Hungarian Grand Prix takes place. I think, is it next week or is it a few weeks' time? I can't remember.
That's a very good question. Next weekend, I think. No, sorry, the weekend after, the 30th. The weekend of the 30th of July. 30th of July to the 1st of August is the next race in Hungary, and then obviously we've then got the summer break for the Belgium Grand Prix as well. So we've got a week off between the Hungarian Grand Prix and now. But I think the Budapest, I think hopefully will suit the Red Bull car a bit more, because obviously there's only a couple of straight line speeds in terms of the main start finish straight for Hungary. So maybe if Red Bull dial it up and tune it very much for the downforce section, Red Bull should still be a competitive one in that race. As I see, Lewis Hamilton is trundling around so long that he's being caught by the safety car and the medic car in the Aston Martin. But obviously taking all the plaudits as you would, being your home Grand Prix, and obviously being on the top of the podium with that. Great result for Lando Norris and McLaren as well, finishing in 4th and 5th. So great job for them. A little bit less points for obviously Ferrari, with Charles Leclerc going back into 2nd place. So only helps McLaren in that battle with Ferrari. So I'll just go through the orders as well, just while they're driving back into the pits. So Hamilton obviously wins the race with only leading 3 laps of this British Grand Prix. So unlucky for Charles Leclerc, who finished around 3.8 seconds off off Hamilton in the end. Valtteri Bottas comes home in 3rd, with Lando Norris and Daniel Ricciardo in 4th and 5th. We've then got Carlos Sainz, the other Ferrari, in 6th position, with his fellow Spaniard Fernando Alonso. Another great performance from him. Started 7th and finished 7th. So great haul of points for Fernando Alonso. Lance Stroll did well compared to his teammate Sebastian Vettel. Stroll finishing in 8th position. Ocon did a great job alongside his teammate in terms of Fernando Alonso. Ocon finishes in 9th. Yuki Tsunoda did quite well to get the final point score of the race. Pierre Gasly, his teammate, just behind him in 11th. George Russell in 12th, so didn't manage to get that first point of his Williams career. Giovinazzi 13th. Latifi 14th. Kimi Raikkonen 15th after that spin with issue with Perez. Perez in 16th does does get the fastest lap, but doesn't go to anyone, obviously, because he's not in the top 10. Mazepin finishes ahead of Schumacher, so Schumacher down in 18. Vettel had a DNF, didn't really know because the team radio was coming on, but we didn't really get information of that. So he retired 10 laps before the end of the race. And obviously, Max Verstappen, not a great day at all. Had a collision with Lewis Hamilton, which saw him crash into the barriers. Haven't really heard anything in terms of the medics, but he looked like when he came out and he went into the medical centre, everything looked okay. But yeah, didn't get any points today, and obviously his rival Hamilton gets 25 points. So yeah, not a great day if you're Max Verstappen. I can see Hamilton and Bottas having a bit of a cuddle together, obviously thanking him for allowing him past, very nice of Valtteri Bottas to do so. Proper team player. Would George Russell have done the same thing for next season? Who knows? But Hamilton, I think, is where's he going? Is he going onto the track?
He's looking to go celebrate in front of the fans a bit closer on the track.
So
very emotional moment for him, I think, given the fact that he's reinserting himself back into this title picture. Not that he was out of it at all, but the sheer point gap, you would have thought if Verstappen was able to finish every single race, then it wouldn't be closed at all. But the fact that he's managed to close it just swings the Drivers' Championship in a huge different direction.
Yeah.
And it really, really puts everything back on for both drivers, really.
Would you say the same? It's going to be difficult for Max from this because Mercedes and Hamilton in particular are very good with their reliability as well. And in terms of luck, he never seems to get any issues. It's always Bottas that has the issues for Mercedes. So, with obviously Verstappen having a DNF today, is it one of them where it's that's sort of something to look at mentally, because Hamilton is pretty much reliable in terms of always finishing the race at least and getting points?
Well, I think Verstappen can walk away and know that, it wasn't really a reliability issue as to why he got knocked out today. It was more of the collision with Hamilton. Mm-hmm. So he might be a bit more cautious, but I don't think he'll lose any of the aggressiveness that we've seen so far this season, because it's paid off for him a lot of the time. Yeah. It's only just today that it hasn't really paid off. Imola in the first corner when he went really aggressive, it paid off for him there. In the first race in Bahrain, he was very, very challenging towards Hamilton. It was only because of track limits that he had to give the race back. We've seen examples of time and time again of him being aggressive on the track, and it's paid off for him. So I don't think we'll see any sort of step back from that aspect from his driving any point later in the season. Yeah,
as we see, obviously the interviews now, Charles Leclerc, 34% of their driver of the day to get that for Formula One. Obviously, got about 72% on ours. So, in terms of, obviously, we'll wrap it up in a minute because we had that red flag. So we've almost done 2.5 hours. So it's been a long stint with that red flag incident as well. But just quickly, obviously, in terms of Charles Leclerc and Ferrari, great performance from them considering obviously their tight battle with McLaren that they've got, and great performance from Charles Leclerc considering really that like you said, and I've said, Ferrari had a bit of a stinker over the last few in France, for example. Great comeback really to be able to be in this position to be on a podium.
Yeah, great drive by Charles Leclerc today. Hopefully it can carry on throughout the season. We see more podiums from Ferrari. As we've seen from McLaren, hopefully they can join them with a couple more podiums throughout the season. It's a shame that Leclerc didn't get the race win today, but he can be very proud of his drive. He put a great performance in, and hopefully, if Ferrari gets a couple of new parts here and there during the summer, when the time allows them to really incorporate and to improve the car, hopefully we'll see more Ferrari on the podium throughout the rest of the season.
Yeah. And obviously they've just gone to Bottas as well. Well, obviously we'll wrap it up with Lewis Hamilton. So they've gone to Bottas now. Not really been a amazing weekend for Bottas. Obviously didn't really make much ground in the sprint qualifying race, whatever it's called, yesterday. Obviously started third with them soft tyres and didn't really make up much ground yesterday. He's finished in that third place. Again, didn't really make much of an impact today. Got the call, what we believe from the team radios, to allow Lewis Hamilton to obviously get this race win now. So yeah, not been an amazing day, but ultimately for Bottas, I suppose he's got points for himself to claw his way back up a little bit, and points for the team.
Yeah, good drive by Bottas overall, but just not good enough for a real challenge to Leclerc, and that's why the team order came in to let Hamilton pass very smoothly and very comfortably. But this is what Mercedes would have wanted. They would have wanted Bottas on the podium, and his third podium in the row, which is a good sign that consistency has returned for him. He had a few problems earlier in the season that weren't necessarily his fault. The collision with George at Imola and the wheel nut issue in Monaco. Yeah. It was only really the Azerbaijan Grand Prix where the car wasn't there and he didn't really perform either. But other than that, he's been solid, just not good enough to really challenge Lewis or Verstappen. But today he put in a decent drive and got some good points for Mercedes overall. So yeah, good drive by him.
Yeah, and then of course we're coming up to the race winner, getting great applause from everyone still in Silverstone. Loving that hat, as you mentioned earlier, Connor. It's a nice hat that he's got for this race. Yeah, so maybe in the next couple of live streams that we see Connor in, he may have that purple Lewis Hamilton hat that he's got. But in terms of Hamilton, we're obviously seeing people still on the chat saying maybe didn't deserve that race win, and you can say that. Like I said, he only led 3 laps of the 52 lap race. Obviously, Charles Leclerc led most of that race today. But like we mentioned, you got to be in the right place at the right time, and somebody that's won 7 Drivers' World Championships is somebody that knows where to be to clean out, claw out them race wins, and this is his 99th race win, I believe, today. So the next one he'll be going for his 100th race win. So maybe not thoroughly deserved in terms of the race with Charles Leclerc, look at being the driver of the day, but a race win's a race win for Hamilton, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. We know Lewis is one of the best when it comes to tyre management, and that's what it would have been throughout this race. Managing the tyres, knowing when to attack, and he did it perfectly. He did it brilliantly to get it done within a few laps to spare near the end of the race, and to close up the gap as well towards the top with Verstappen is a huge bonus for him too. Obviously, a lot of people will point back to the incident early in the race between him and Verstappen and say, "Oh, it
should have been 20.
it should have been 20 seconds, or Hamilton shouldn't win because of the collision, or But you can look at it all different angles. But at the end of the day, the FIA has given the punishment to Lewis, which was a 10-second penalty. He served it, and he still went on to win the race, which just goes to show just how talented of a driver Lewis Hamilton is. To go on, even despite the 10-second penalty, to go on to win the race, huge win for him, great win for him, in my opinion. I know people will disagree with that, but you seriously can't say that, even after the 10-second penalty, that this isn't a great drive by Lewis because of the fact that he's gone on to win this race. I think it's a great drive by him, and a good drive and a great drive by him to win the race overall, in my opinion.
Yeah, and in terms of Max Verstappen, then quickly, obviously disappointing for him to only be half a lap in terms of this race. Obviously, like you said, people will go on about Hamilton and Verstappen because it was them two that had that incident. But Verstappen, a couple of weeks now to wait to bounce back. But overall, like we said, Hungary might be a good circuit for Red Bull in general. So he'll just want to bounce back to have that race win before the summer break, really, won't he?
Yeah, that would obviously the main target for Verstappen is to win every race.
Yeah.
But today just puts more emphasis on it because the gap's been closed and he's been unable to finish because of the collision. But as you mentioned, Red Bull, although they haven't managed to win at the Hungaroring for a few years now, mainly because of the Mercedes dominance. They've had good performances there in the past. And now they've got a car that has shown potential to get race wins on the season and to really challenge this Mercedes. So they'll have confidence going into the race that they'll have a couple of new parts on the car now as well because of the condition that it was in. And thankfully as well that Verstappen was able to walk away and he looks to be okay, and he should be fine to race in Hungary in a couple of weeks' time.
Yeah.
But yeah, they'll just be focusing on the future now and moving forward beyond this, and not playing too much into it, not taking away too much of it, just focusing on Hungary in a couple of weeks' time and try and win that race, in my opinion. So yeah, Verstappen will come bouncing back for sure.
Yeah, so that will be an interesting one after the incident we've had between Hamilton and Verstappen, how the next race in Budapest and the Hungarian Grand Prix plays out. We will wrap it up here simply because we have been over 2.5 hours now with that red flag incident that we've had. So thank you very much, Conor, obviously for being on the stream, but ultimately for being on it for 2.5 hours with the red flag incident we had. It was about half an hour long. So yeah, I hope it's been great. Obviously, thank you very much for everyone who's been watching the stream as well, and obviously putting your notes, putting your comments in the chat as well. It's been great to sort of watch and get your points on the racing as well. So yeah, thank you very much for that. Obviously, subscribe to the Let's Talk Sport YouTube channel as well. We do many more watch-alongs, not just for Formula One, but other sports in general as well. Of course, I'm going to put a cheeky plug in for my YouTube channel, being the Pole Position Podcast as well. It's linked in the Let's Talk Sport YouTube channel as well. So yeah, please give that a follow as well. That'd be much appreciated with the F1 content that comes out. But yeah, Conor, thank you very much for being on the stream. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I've thoroughly enjoyed this race that we've had. So yeah, thank you very much for being on.
Yeah, cheers, Jack. It's been great talking to you about Formula One again. I think the last time we talked about Formula One was, well, we talk about it in our WhatsApp group, but I think the last time we did a watch along must have been the Bahrain one, the first one of the season.
I think it was, and then you came in for the Imola one at the end of the race as well. So yeah, it's been a while, but I've really enjoyed the live stream today. So hopefully we'll have a few more to do in the future, whether it be the Hungarian Grand Prix or the Belgian one we've got after the summer break as well. But yeah, obviously thank you very much for being on for that extra time with the red flag as well. But yeah, we're gonna wrap it up here. So obviously thank you very much everybody for watching this stream, and obviously we'll be live with the F1 in a couple of weeks time for the Hungarian Grand Prix as well. So yeah, thank you very much for watching, and we will see you all in the next one. Take care, see you soon.